I'm also I'm also turning on the recording with today's pre-retirement seminar to soak up all the information you can. You may go on circuit overload by the end of our time together. We usually do go the several hours that have been allotted for this. But the good news is, number one, I will send you a follow-up email with links to all the presentations and then a link to the recording of this session. So at your leisure, you can go through and go, oh, I don't remember what was said. Let me take a look at that. The other thing that I encourage you to do is we usually hold these pre-retirement seminars about 4 times a year. So if you're going through and have not retiring this particular end of the school year, then join us next year also for the series. As I tell everybody, I've been hosting the pre-retirement seminars now for several years. I hear something new, and unfortunately, I can't go back and change what I've already done, but I sure wish I would have known that information before I retired. I'm going to put a link in the chat to the agenda, I hope. Oh, that does not look right. And I think our first presenter, Robin, are you here, Robin? I know she was joining just a minute ago.
Robin is talking, but Robin was muted.
Hey, Robin.
Hey, sorry, I'm having, of course, technical difficulties. So I'm on my phone. I joined in the group. So I am ready when you're ready, but I am going to need you to do my slideshow. Sorry, y'all. The best laid plans. My computer is not having a happy morning.
That's okay. Technology sometimes is our friend, and sometimes we just have to go through and punt. And also co-hosting with me this morning, the voice you heard a minute ago with Tony Smith. She too is a GAE retired at-large director and president of the retired organization. And so, Robin, I think I am ready to share, and you can see hopefully from the agenda, the link I put in the chat. Robin's going to talk to us about legal stuff, because as you retire, as you go through and you age, there are documents that you should have in order. And so we're going to take a listen and see what Robin is sharing with us. And give me just a moment. And we are good, I think.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Robin Lacrimosa. I am a life care coordinator at Kimbrough Law, which is an elder law firm. We have offices in Athens and Gainesville. And we basically help folks figure out the legal, financial, and care parts of aging. So we can go to the next slide. So there are 3 things that every person should have. We see this mostly with people as they're aging and retiring, but honestly, we recommend this for anyone over the age of 18. And so that's that they should have a last will and testament, a financial power of attorney, and a healthcare power of attorney. And those are 2 different things. And we're going to talk about those. Next slide, please. So the reason having a last will and testament is important is because if you do not, Georgia law determines who receives your property. A lot of people assume that their spouse will receive everything or their children, but that's not necessarily the way it works. So depending on how many children you have, your spouse may receive a half or a third of your property, and the rest will be distributed among your children. This is if you die without a will. And that becomes complicated because sometimes people are estranged from their children. Sometimes it's not in the adult child's best interest to inherit a large amount of money at one time without any kind of guidance. Sometimes there's issues. We've had people who have remarried and they assumed that the spouse would inherit the house, but they didn't. And then there's those blended family issues. So that's why it's important that everybody have a last will and testament. So next slide, please. So the other thing that happens if you don't have one is it makes the probate process more complicated for your family, which unfortunately, when you are talking about legal matters, complicated means more expensive. So they have to, everyone pretty much has to petition the court, but if they have a will, basically that's a really simple process. They go and get assigned as the executor. But if you don't have a will, then things have to be advertised. They have to get a court order to sell anything. And like I mentioned earlier, there may be unintended consequences for the children or blended family children or the spouse. So next slide, please. So what happens with one? Basically the opposite of everything that I just said. Yeah, whoever is you wanted to get your property is who gets it. I think that families are complicated, so having a last will and testament cuts down a lot on any potential fighting. People bring all of their childhood hurts or misunderstandings and miscommunications with them throughout their adult life, and then sometimes when they're in a really stressful situation, such as an unexpected death, it's not always, family dynamics sometimes do not always come out in the best way. So basically having a last will and testament makes things much easier. The other thing that I would mention that's really important is if you have a special needs child that you are leaving any money to, you want to make sure that you have spoken to an attorney, because if they're receiving state benefits, you don't want them to inherit a large amount of money from you, because that may have a negative impact on any state benefits they may be receiving. Next slide, please. So your financial power of attorney. This is where you name an agent. We actually recommend that you have an agent and a backup. This is someone who's going to make financial decisions for you if you are incompetent, you are unable to do that. And so if you do not have someone named as your power of attorney, and you have something happen. So we have a client who his wife was going in for what she thought would be a routine surgery, and she unfortunately had a massive stroke, and she's no longer competent, but he did not have a financial power of attorney. So he is actually having to go to the court to try to get guardianship so he can sell some of the property that they own to help take care of her. So if you do not have a financial power of attorney in place and something happens to you, then you, first of all, you lose your agency in deciding which agent you want. So sometimes it becomes whichever family member is going to step up, but it gets much more complicated and again, more expensive for your family, because they have to petition the probate court. They have to apply for guardianship and conservatorship, which means that basically annually they have to show the court how they are managing your money appropriately. And everything comes with court fees. So that's why a financial power of attorney is really important to have in place. Next slide, please. So this is kind of what we've talked about. If you have one in place, then your agent can immediately step in and they can access your bank accounts. They can sell your property if they need to. There's nothing that involves the court necessarily. So that makes it a lot easier. And we have some families, you have the option, you can name one agent. We always suggest you have a backup in case your agent may be out of town. We have some families that they have children that they want to work together. So they set it up where it's child A and child B have to make decisions together. Or we have some that is the last thing that they want, and they want child A to make the decisions. So it just depends on each situation. Next slide, please. And then the advanced directive for healthcare, this is separate. So sometimes people get confused when we say power of attorney and we use them kind of interchangeably, but there's actually two separate power of attorneys. This also used to be called your living will. This one, if you already have a living will and you don't have any changes to it, you do not have to redo this document because they changed the name of it. But this is basically where, similar to the financial power of attorney, you're naming an agent who's going to make your healthcare decisions for you. You do have places in there where you can share what you want, whether you want CPR, whether you want to be kept alive on a ventilator. And then you also name an agent who is going to speak for you when you cannot. This is really important. I worked in the emergency room for 14 years as a social worker, and I always say this is the best gift that you can give your family, because in a really stressful situation, it's really hard to be that person to say, even if the doctors are, they'll share to a certain point, but everything is your decision. And so if you have spoken with your family and they are aware of what your wishes are, what you would want to happen, or you have this in place, then those decisions can be made. So for example, I am my father's healthcare power of attorney. I actually don't live as close to him as my sister. They live on the same property, but my sister would just not, she hasn't worked in the health field. And my dad says she's too smushy. He wants me because he knows I will make the hard decisions and do what he wants. So those are just things to think about. Again, you can make this where you have where the children have to work together, or they can be completely separate. And they don't have to be your children. I have a lot of, we call them solo agers, and they have their friends, their lifelong friends or other family members that make those decisions for them. So this is a really important piece of paperwork as well. Next slide. So one of the things we talk a lot about at our firm, and is just something good to know in general, is asset protection. So here in Georgia, if you had a catastrophic event and needed skilled nursing care, you basically have to spend almost all of your money. If you're single, you do have to spend all of your money before you're eligible for state benefits. Currently, nursing home care is about $9,000 or $10,000 a month. If you are a single person in Georgia, you can only have $2,000 in your name. If you're married, your spouse, your community spouse can have, I believe it's $142,000. So you'll hear people as you start aging. We have a lot of clients who have maybe recently had a diagnosis, or they've had a health scare, and they recognize that this is something that they might need. For a lot of people, it's really important that they have assets to leave to their children or their grandchildren or their charity. I mean, you've worked really hard all your life for this money. So what do you want to do with it, and how can you protect it? So here in Georgia, you can't just put everything in your children's name and then apply for Medicaid for state benefits the next day. The state has figured that out. So there is a 5-year look back. So those are some of the things that are kind of important. Can you go to the next slide, please? So what we usually recommend is there are trusts. There's a lot of different things, and that's really where you're going to come in and talk to the attorney. But there's a lot of different options. You can put things into a trust that then protect them from being considered your assets. They also can protect you from liability, such if you have a car accident or someone tries to sue you. And you can name your child as a trustee if you have a child that you trust. So the reason we say it's not a good idea to just transfer all of your assets to children is, one, like I mentioned, there's that 5-year look back. Secondly, there's potential capital gains and tax implications for your children. Sometimes, and people laugh when I say this, but sometimes you might not like the person that your child married, or you may love the person that your child married, and then you transfer all your assets and then they get divorced. And then now your assets are in your daughter's name. So now those are considered her assets, and her now to be ex-husband can come after them. So things get really complicated. So it's not just as simple as moving things to your children. There's, like we said, some liabilities on them. The thing is there's no restriction. So that basically becomes your child's money. And so, like I said, families get complicated, people get married, divorced, remarried. So it's not always the best way to handle that. The one other thing I will say here in Georgia also is that they do estate recovery, which basically means if you own your house, that doesn't count as an asset. If you needed, say, skilled nursing care, then what will happen is after you've passed away, the state will say, we spent $100,000 on your care. You have this home that was in your name that's worth $400,000. We want our $100,000 back out of your home. So that gets a little complicated, and there's things you can do to kind of set that up. I've seen families that the child has moved in to care for mom with the assumption that the daughter would just get the house, and then mom needed nursing home care, and it gets really complicated. Next slide, please. I feel like I'm gloom and doom here on this, but this is important stuff to know. And I always say knowledge is power. So does Medicare pay for long-term care? Absolutely not. I have had a lot of folks who kind of are like, oh, well, I have Medicare and I have insurance, so I'm fine. Medicare was designed to get you better. So it's basically a rehab. It's very short term. It's not going to pay for skilled nursing care. It's not going to pay for long-term care. So if you have an illness, you have Alzheimer's, you have Parkinson's, you have COPD, really any of those kind of long-term chronic conditions that you're going to need assistance with, you're going to need care help at some point. Medicare is not going to be the solution that you might hope it will be. Medicare is great if you have a surgery or you have a fall, you need rehab, you need to rebuild your strength, and then you go home and maybe rehab and home care comes in, which would be someone who comes in and kind of helps you around the house, make sure you can get in and out of the shower, but that is very limited. And you can see on there, it says 100 days in a skilled facility. So basically, if you have some kind of surgery or hip replacement, broken hip, you go to rehab, they're going to pay for 100 days of skilled nursing care, but it is tight, kind of tiered. So the first certain amount of days, I think it's 60 days, are free. And then you start paying a copay. And then after 100 days, if you are still in that skilled facility, you're going to have to start paying out of pocket, which is going to be that $9,000 or $10,000 a month. Most health insurances do not cover that. And then also if you need to move into assisted living, those are also all pretty much out of pocket. They are not covered by Medicare or Medicaid. Next slide. So one of the things we like to talk about is what money is available to you as you start to age. This is one of the things we talk about a lot at our firm. Mr. Kimbrough, our attorney who started our firm, actually did this for his mother-in-law and how he got interested in this. So there is a pension plan for veterans who served during wartime. And we see a lot of folks looking to this pension when they start to need care, whether they need to move into assisted living or they want to have someone come into their home and help take care of them so they don't have to move. So this is just a potential, basically money stream for those who qualify. Next slide, please. So the VA doesn't really publicize this. I will readily admit that I have been in social work here in Athens for probably 20 years, and I didn't know about this until I started working at the law firm. So the VA does not publicize it. The VA does not make it particularly easy to apply, which is part of the reason why we've started helping people with this. Next slide. So how do you qualify? The first one is that there are certain dates of service for these wars that are listed here that the VA has determined as eligible dates of service. I don't include those in here, but anyone is free to reach out to me, send me an email afterward, and I'm happy to discuss this with you and see if you'll qualify. And I guess I should say this is for the veteran, and if you were legally married to a veteran when they passed, there is also a surviving spouse benefit. So we see that sometimes as well. The next slide, please. So the first part is dates of service. That's usually where we start. The second requirement is age and health status. So you have to be at least 65 or older. You have to be retired. Your surviving spouse can be any age, and then you need assistance with 2 activities of daily living. Now, I will say it's a very low bar. Basically, you just could have grab bars in your shower. If your doctor says he would recommend you use a cane, even if you don't use the cane. It's some of those kind of things, just some assisted devices can help you qualify. Next slide. And then the third one is financial. And this is where folks who apply through the VA will get denied, because you basically have to have more medical expenses than gross monthly income. But there are things that we can do to offset some of those costs. So you would be eligible for this benefit if you meet the other requirements. Next slide, please. And so this is why it's important. This is a lot of money. If you are a veteran with a dependent, which basically means that you're married or you have a special needs adult child that you're caring for, you could be eligible for up to $2,642 per month. That's tax-free for the rest of your life. And then the surviving spouse benefit is $1,432. That's important, especially for the older generation, older than you all, because a lot of times the women maybe worked or they worked part-time. So when the husband passes away, their income really goes down. So this is one of the things that we are, really trying to spread the word about and make sure people realize that this is a pension that they earned for serving during wartime when we needed them. And the other things are they have to have been honorably discharged and they have to have been in full-time military service. So unfortunately, the reserves do not count for this pension. Next slide. And then the last thing I'll talk about is kind of what we call life care planning. This is something we do at our firm. We basically take a holistic approach. So basically you come in for legal and financial help, and then if you have care needs, we can help with that. We call basically the long-term care maze. It is a maze. Everything is very siloed as far as care as you get older. And so it's a little hard to access services. So Mr. Kimbrough, our attorney, realized that people were coming in and he could help them make plans, but when it came to care needs, he didn't really know what to do. So that's I'm a geriatric social worker. There are other law firms throughout Georgia. I think there's 3 of us that do this. So if you're not in our area, but it's something you're interested in, I can certainly hook you up with an attorney that's close to you that also does this. And basically our attorneys, my clients engage with me for a year at a time, and they have unlimited access. So we kind of set up a plan for them. And then if they have a crisis, that's when we kind of step in. Next slide, please. So this just kind of shows how our firm works, how these things all intersect. Because really, as you age and you start looking at how you want to make sure you're protecting your money and that you have all of these documents, everyone's going to have care needs. I think the statistic is 7 out of 10 older adults will need some type of long-term care at some point. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to end up in a nursing home, but you may have, like I said, a surgery that requires some rehab help, different things like that. So the care part of it is really important. And unfortunately, the aging services have not done a good job about making things easily accessible. It is a bit of a maze. Next slide, please. So these are kind of the benefits. And what I always tell people is, and I'm guessing a lot of you, as you're getting ready to retire, or just recently retired, don't have care needs necessarily right now. But what I tell everybody is you want to be thinking ahead. You come at a place of power when you have planned ahead rather than waiting until a crisis and trying to figure something out. So I liken it to like a phone tree. So if you suddenly had to go to the emergency room, who are you going to call? Who's going to be at the house to take care of your dog? Those kind of things. And if you kind of have a plan in your head, it's much less stressful and much easier to kind of start implementing that plan. So these are some of the benefits. We call it life care planning. It's really just planning, kind of like you're doing at this webinar, just kind of planning for the future. You get the right care, you get what you want. If something's happened and you haven't made any plans or haven't really thought about it, sometimes you end up doing what your children think is best for you, and that's not always what might be what you want. If you are a caregiver, so unfortunately for a lot of our folks, if you are married and you might end up being a caregiver for your spouse. We see that a lot. And so that's a lot for the caregiver. So having some support and having some plans in place, because one of the things I used to see in the emergency room a lot was I would have a spouse who was maybe caring for their husband or wife who had Alzheimer's, and then the caregiver got sick and had to have surgery. And everything was overturned because the caregivers are the wheels on the bus. They're the what keep the bus on the road. And so when the caregiver gets sick, everything kind of goes sideways. This is also really important to think about if you have special needs children. As you age, you need to be thinking about putting plans in place for them as well, because inevitably I mean, it doesn't matter your age, life is uncertain and things can happen and you can get sick and need to go into the hospital and you need to have a plan in place. So that's basically the most of it, and how this kind of ties in with the legal stuff is when you are planning ahead, you make the decisions about what you want to happen to your money, what's important to you, and you can set all of those things into place. Next slide. I think I'm almost done. So yeah, it basically puts you in the driver's seat. That's the big thing. And all of this puts you in the driver's seat, the legal paperwork as well. So that's kind of the down and dirty really fast. I don't know if there's any questions.
For those of you who came in after Robin started, I did mention that I will be sending you a follow-up email in the next few days that will have links to the slides. It'll have a link to this video so that you can go through and watch again, and it'll also have contact information for each of our presenters. So Robin, feel free to put your contact information in the chat even now. And we do have time for just one or two questions. And I'm hoping that people will, we all have our individual circumstances, but I hope the questions will be for the good of the whole, so to speak, and not, well, this is my situation, because I'm sure whoever you engage to do your legal work will help you with your individual circumstances. And I know Robin is fairly good or extremely good at answering questions also. So Robin McDonald, I see your hand up.
Good morning.
Good
I just
morning.
wanted her to elaborate a little bit more about the 5-year look back and trust, how those two intertwined.
Sure. So basically, the 5-year look back for Medicaid is considered a gift. So you can, if you have trust with your child, you can kind of give things over, sign things over to your children, as long as you're outside of that 5-year look back. So basically, that's where the pre-planning kind of comes in. What we usually recommend, because of the reasons I talked about earlier with complicated families, is that they set up a trust. And then basically, when you put everything into a trust, as far as Medicaid is concerned, that is a gift. You're making a gift to the trust. And so there is a 5-year look back for that. Now, does that mean if in 3 years after you've done that, you have some kind of catastrophic event and you need skilled nursing care, are you completely out of luck? No. That's when, and we do have people who come in that don't have 5 years. They might not even have 5 months to plan, but there are things that we can do to set them up to where they don't have to pay. So basically, if you do nothing and you have some kind of catastrophic event, you spend down all of your money until you qualify for Medicaid. What we can do is, if you haven't done a 5-year look back, or you're 3 years into your 5-year look back, basically Medicaid will prorate what you still owe for those remaining 2 years to the 5 years. I don't know if that makes sense. It gets a little complicated, but what I always tell people is it's never too late. There's always things that can be done to save some of the assets, even if you haven't made it that 5 years, or your mom isn't going to make it 5 years before something happens.
Thank you, and it did make sense.
Okay,
You did a great job of explaining it.
And Tony Smith, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Robin, I found myself in a situation where I had to make arrangements for an adult sibling who did not have life insurance or a burial fund. So do you have any suggestions for us to make sure that doesn't happen?
That's a really good question. And I don't know that there are a lot of options. That is one of those things that's not really covered or caught by any kind of safety net, I guess is a good way to say that. We saw that a lot in the emergency room. And usually in those situations, really all you can do is ask the funeral homes, like, what there are no funds here. What can we do? So one of the things like related to the Medicaid planning is you can have $10,000 in funeral costs. So when we're doing Medicaid planning for people, that is one of the things that we go ahead and say, set up, move $10,000 for funeral costs, which doesn't really address your situation. It's a really good question, and I don't know that there's really easy answer to it, unfortunately. I have seen, and I mean, this sounds kind of gruesome, but I have seen families who just couldn't afford it, and they, that person will be taken care of as far as like a burial. It will be what we call a pauper's funeral. And basically the county has to absorb that cost. That's kind of worst case scenario, and that's really hard for some families, but sometimes families just don't have the money. So the best thing you can try to do is get someone to make those plans.
Yeah, it is a tough situation. I have friends and they took care of me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, yeah. That's when people really kind of come together. And the funeral homes, from when I've worked with them, usually if you explain the situation, they try to work with you and make sure that, they're doing the least expensive, fancy bells and whistles event.
Robin, thank you so much for joining us today, and I appreciate all the information. Again, I always hear something new when you speak, so thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I'm appreciative.
Okay, thanks. Y'all have a good day.
You too. As Lisa Underwood is setting up for our next presentation, which will be an overview of TRS, just kind of how it works and how it's funded. We do have a speaker coming on later this morning who will talk. He's from TRS, and he'll share steps to actually talking to TRS and retirement plans. Lisa Underwood's presentation is designed to give you just an overview of TRS, because if you as an active practitioner currently don't understand your retirement system, then when the legislators who think they do want to muck with it, if you don't have that understanding of how it functions, it prohibits you from taking action to make sure your defined benefit plan stays in place. So Lisa, as you screen share, I hope in just a minute, because I will be sending you follow-up information, if you're on here with just your initials or without a last name, if you can go through and either put your first and last name in the chat or rename yourself on the screen, it will be really helpful for me to mine the registration list so I can make sure you get the follow-up information. So thank you. I see one in the chat. This is great. So, and you can change your name at any point in time. Thank you all. Thank you. Lisa, are you ready? And you're muted.
Okay. Yes, I am. I'm trying to, I can share. I'm struggling going back and forth from the Zoom to the slideshow. Let's see. Okay, so I've got to present.
So while Lisa is hopefully unstruggling, I will share that one of the things that the GAE retired organization does is to go through and attend the TRS meetings. They're held every couple months in Atlanta, and they are viewable via Zoom. And they're at 10:30 on Wednesday mornings. And so people who are still in the classroom or still doing their jobs in education, you guys are going through and not being able to attend these Wednesday meetings. So we do attend them. We do monitor. Lisa is the chair of the TRS monitoring committee for GAE retired, and Lisa does an excellent job of writing up a report after each meeting that is publicized in the GAE and GAE retired information. So Lisa, it does look like you're sharing.
Okay.
And so you are on, my friend.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on your early Saturday morning. Okay, and like Karen just said, this is an overview of TRS. Okay. All right. Okay, and this is the first. Okay, and I know the video didn't really work very well for me the last time, so I'll see if it works this time. Okay, this is just a little overview of the economic impact of our teacher pensions in Georgia. Okay. And the video may go in just a few minutes. All right, if you have not done so, you do need to go to trsga.com and set up your TRS account so that you can see how you're doing with your savings for your TRS retirement. And there's all kinds of other information in that website. They have a pension calculator so that you can get an estimate of what your monthly income would be, and just all of these things that will help you plan. So this is a very important site that you should become familiar with.
And Lisa, the video is not on this slide.
It's not on
so
this slide, right? Okay.
It's on a different slide.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Yep.
All right. Also, this website, there are lots of, there are different videos you can watch and podcasts to learn, to learn about what it's going to be like for your retirement and how your money is going to work. So this is just a really great website. This is very easy to negotiate. And if you have not already signed up for your TRS login, you need to go ahead and do that, even if you've got many years left to go. Okay, I have all this stuff in the middle of my screen. Okay, as of the last TRS board meeting that I attended in January, we've got another one next week. But as of February 2023, our TRS fund had $90.2 billion in assets. So as you can see, we've got, we are very financially stable. We have 241,819 actively contributing members. Those are the people who are still in the school buildings and in the school systems who are actively working. And then we have 145,261 retired members. So as long as we keep that very healthy balance, we have many more people contributing to the fund than we have who are retired and receiving checks each month from the fund. So this is a very healthy gap, as our TRS executive director reminds us every time we have a meeting, and we want to keep it this way. Okay. Then we had total benefit recipients, and I've just got the latest numbers from February and from March. We have our total benefits. Those are the people who are retired and collecting a check. And then the average monthly benefit for our retirees is $3,543 a month. Some people who retired with greater income or more years may receive a larger check than that, or if they've been retired for a very long time, their check may be larger. I have only been retired since the end of May last year, so my check is a little bit smaller than that, but it'll get there with those raises we get. Average service credit, this surprised me as well. I always thought everybody got 30 years in, and I didn't. I did 27, but the average service credit is about 25 and a half years. Average age at retirement is 60, and the average age at payment is 72. And this is just averaging together all the ages of all of the retirees, from the people who, have been retired for 20 or 30 years now. We have several people who are retired who are over 100 years old now. And then we also have those people who retire when they're 52 years old. So this is just the average age. And like I said, this is right in the middle of this. Okay. Wish I could make this move. Oh, there it is. Okay. And then our total benefit payroll is 495.6 million. And I said before, we have 90 billion. So our fund is very, very capable of having our total payroll met. Okay, and then the EFT, 99% of our retirees have their checks sent to them, direct deposit to their bank. We have just a few people, 1%, who receive a paper check. Okay. Okay, now we're going to just talk about the difference between a defined benefit and a defined contribution plan. And then we'll talk about the TRS formula, and we'll talk about how TRS is funded. All right, comparing the two types of pension plans. Okay, and then this is a video that talks about our pension plans. Karen, is this supposed to actually play? I think this is the thing I had trouble with last
So
time.
if you'll scroll down
Okay,
and beyond the blue, and it loads, it's in the center of the page, but I don't see it right this, it takes it a minute for it to load as a video on the page, which is why I don't have it downloaded as a YouTube video. Go up a little more, Lisa, please.
because I do want everyone to get to see this, because this is really some great information.
Again, it should be a little bit more to the top. And it should have loaded by now. Keep going. Patience is such a virtue.
There we
Here it
go.
is. Okay.
Rise like a warrior, a trailblazer, a leader, a mother. Like Allison, Natalie, Eleni, like you.
A pension plan is a retirement savings plan where an employer maintains a fund on behalf of its employees for their retirement. The money in the fund is usually invested in long-term, low-risk growth investments. The plan is typically tax deferred, which means the contributions made to the plan are not subject to income taxes, and in addition, the investment income of the retirement fund is also not taxed. Taxes are only paid once money is taken out of the fund in the form of retirement income payments. This tax advantage provides employees with a lucrative way to defer part of their current wages and salary to retirement savings where it can be used as retirement income. Generally, there are two types of retirement plans: defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans. A defined benefit pension plan is a more traditional, older style of pension plan where workers' retirement benefits are calculated and thus defined by a formula that takes into account their years of work at the company and their salary history. The employer controls the plan and the plan assets and guarantees that the employee will receive a certain amount of retirement compensation no matter what the performance was for the underlying assets in the plan. A defined contribution plan is the more modern type of pension plan. Most people are familiar with these types of plans through making 401k contributions. In these types of plans, the employee controls the amount contributed to the plan as well as how the funds are invested. Retirement benefits depend on how the fund assets perform and grow.
Okay. Okay, I didn't want to do that again.
So Lisa, maybe you want to stop sharing this and then go back to your PowerPoint. Will that work?
Yes. Let's see if I can do that.
A pension plan is a retirement savings.
Sorry about this. I know how to do the PowerPoint, but this video messes me up.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing you for a minute and then you should be able, I hope.
Plan where an employer may
Okay, so now you should be able to go back in and grab your PowerPoint.
Okay, so I just closed the whole thing. Sorry about that, because I just closed the whole thing. Now I've got to go back and find it.
There are some days when technology is just interesting.
Oh, it is. I know. Because I just closed the whole thing out, but it's right here.
My grandson calls it the Zoom cooties.
There's advantages of living in ignorance.
I don't know why it's not opening. I've got it.
Okay, do you want me to drive and you just say next slide?
I think that may work out better, Karen, because I've got it right here, but it's just not loading back up because I closed it trying to get out of the video.
Okay,
I do know how to do slideshows. The video's got me messed up a little bit.
that's okay. Make sure I'm on the right slide, current slide. Okay, so you can just tell me next slide and I'll happily go to the next one.
Okay, I've just got to get back to us again. Oh, man. Okay, so we just had the video, we just talked about a little bit of the difference between the defined benefit and the defined contribution. The defined benefit, the retirement income stream is guaranteed for life. If you go into the TRS website and it does the pension calculator and tells you what your monthly check will be, that is going to stay the same. I mean, it's not going to go down. We know the stock market has been volatile. And if you have anything like Invalic or 401k, you took a hit, your money went down, but your TRS paycheck is not impacted by the volatility of the stock market. It's guaranteed, it's guaranteed for life. Your defined contribution is not guaranteed for life. As we just said with the 401ks, when you have a volatile stock market like we've had, the money does go down, and then that would affect your income if that was your entire income that you're relying on. Okay, next slide. Okay, with the defined benefit, your employer invests your contributions. Each month when you are paid, you have that piece that comes out for your TRS contribution that is taken out of your monthly paycheck, and your employer takes care of getting that to TRS for you. You do not have to do that. You just get your paycheck, the money comes out, your employer sends it to TRS, and you do not have to bother with any of that. When you do a 401k or a 401b, you are responsible for what you invest the money in, how you want it invested, if you want it to be high growth, if you want it to be something more stable, but you are responsible for investing your contributions. You are responsible for making those selections. Next slide. Okay, as I said a few minutes ago, with your defined benefit, you know what your paycheck is going to be. I know every single month what my paycheck from TRS is going to be. And it is not impacted by the stock market, going up and going down. If you have your defined contribution of 401k, you do not know. I mean, you don't know. Sometimes when we've had a very bad year, which we just had last year with the stock market, people's 401ks, their investments went down quite a bit. One person said about 27%, but your TRS is not impacted by this. Okay, next slide. Okay, your defined benefit, your TRS retirement fund, your check is protected from inflation. Your survivor benefits are built in, depending on how you select your options when you retire. And with your defined contribution, nothing is protected. I mean, if the stock market crashes, your money's gone. When inflation happens, you don't get a raise because of inflation. We do with our defined benefit. We receive a cost of living increase every January and every July, irregardless of what is happening with the stock market. So we get a 1.5% raise every January and 1.5% every July. Okay, next slide. One of the things, and this is something that actually I considered when making a decision. I came into the profession late. I didn't start teaching until I was 36 years old, and I had been working in the private sector. I have a lot of teachers in my family. And then one of the things I noticed, they retired. They were very comfortable in their retirement. They had guaranteed income in retirement. And, getting into my 30s, that started looking very, very attractive to me. So one of the great parts of our TRS retirement is it is a great recruiting tool for people to come in and go into the profession. Retention is another very important component of our TRS retirement plan. And I know a lot of you have been teaching quite some time, and a lot of us, it seems like we get around that 10 or 15 year slump where we're just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this for 10 more years. I can't do this for 15 more years. And when you get to that point, it's just important to think about, okay, I can get through this one more year. I've got this great retirement. You can go at your check into my TRS and say, oh yeah, I can do this. I mean, I've got this. So it is a great retention tool. It's very important to keep our teachers in the classrooms. And then we retire with dignity. You retire with dignity and comfort because you know how much money you're going to have. You know what your check is going to be every month. So you can make plans for your retirement because you know exactly how much money you have each month. And very few professions offer that. I have a lot of friends who are retired, and they just don't have that kind of security like we do. So that is just a wonderful, wonderful part of our retirement plan. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, then we'll talk next about the TRS formula. Okay, for our normal retirement, you need to have 30 years of credible service or at least 10 years of credible service and be 60 years old. We have a lot of people who start their careers when they're straight out of college. They're 22 years old. They do not have to work until they're 60. They work 30 years and they can retire. Okay, I did not start when I was 22. I started when I was 36. So technically, by the time I was 60, I could retire, even though I did not have 30 years. I did go a little bit longer than that because I wanted to get a little farther along. So, but that is, you have to have at least 30 years of service or be 60 years old with at least 10 years. Okay, next slide. Okay, then here's how the formula works. You take your years of credible service, including partial years, and then you multiply each year of service times 2%. And then you have your highest average salary.
And that's 24 consecutive months. So that might not be at
Yes.
the end of your career. It might be someplace else.
Right. Yes, it could be. Because, we do all different things. I mean, sometimes, we become an administrator, then we go back to the classroom. Yes, we move around into different positions. And then that gives you your maximum benefit. Okay, so for example, if you had 30 years of credible service and your highest average salary was $50,000 a year, then that would be times 2%. That'd be $30,000 per year. And then that would give you $2,500 a month for your retirement. If you have 40 years, that's going to take you up to, and your highest was $60,000, that would take you to $48,000 a year, because it's going to be 40 years times 2%. So basically, if you have 40 years, that's going to be 80% of your salary. If you retire with 30 years, you're going to get 60% of your salary. Okay, and I really took advantage of the unused sick leave credit, and so did my husband. My husband retired after 32 years with a technical college. And like I said, I retired actually at 25 years, but I had 2 years of sick leave. So my retirement benefit is based on 27 years of service, although I only worked 25. So if you save those sick days, they really add up over a period of time. My husband also had more than 2 years of sick leave built up, and you get paid for that. That counts as years of service. Okay, next slide. Okay. Okay. Because I can't quite see this. Because I
Well,
can't see the whole
We had
slide.
when I say they tried to take, and more for do something to the TRS system, this is just a good example. In 2020, there was legislation that they wanted the unused sick leave credit to go away. And so you can see at the bottom, and they always go through and say, oh, this won't impact you. It'll just impact the people who are hired after July 1. And so this was a piece of legislation that fortunately was not passed by the General Assembly, but it's just a good example of sometimes someone gets an interesting idea and thinks that it should become law.
Okay, and we mentioned before that we have our cost of living every January and every July. So it's 1.5% in January and 1.5% in July. This is also something else that our legislators sometimes try to go after and take away from us. I know they had something several years ago that they wanted to change the wording from will receive an increase in January and July. They want to change the word will to may. Well, I may do something. You know what? If I say I may do that, I'm not doing it, okay? But if I say I will do something, I am. So they were trying to mess that up. And our retirees, I was working at the time, but our retired members were able to bombard our legislators with phone calls, letters, emails, to the point that they got the message and said, okay, and they backed off, and they didn't take that away. Okay.
And
And
so,
then
go ahead.
good. Okay. Well, go ahead, Karen.
Well, again, 2020 was an active year legislatively, and the legislators, there was a bill to make it, instead of 1.5% COLA twice a year, it said the law would have said 3% or less COLA awarded annually. And so we did some quick math, and 1.5 twice a year is more money awarded than 3% or less. And the or less was problematic. And luckily, this piece of legislation, again, was defeated.
Okay. And then there's been all kinds of legislation to impact our pension. They tried to mess with our sick leave. They try to change our multiplier, because right now is 2% for every year of credible service you have. They like to change the minimum age to retire, because we do have people who, like I said, when they're young, by the time they have 30 years, they're still in their early 50s. And then there's been all kinds of proposals trying to stop people from retiring that early. There's been salary caps, highest average salary. This is just a list of different things that there have been legislation over the years to have an impact on our retirement. Okay, retirement legislation that has a fiscal impact can only be introduced during the first year of a 2-year session. For example, this year, our legislators was in the first year of a 2-year session. So anything that has a financial impact must be introduced in the first year. And it can only be acted on in the second year. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then this was House Bill 173, legislation that was handled in 2021. And Karen, you could jump in and tell them about this one with the investments.
So this is a piece of legislation that we actually liked.
Uh-huh.
It allows TRS to invest in alternative investments. You can see some examples listed there, but there is a 5% cap on the amount of TRS's assets that could be invested in this kind of vehicle. And TRS has been really cautious with alternative investments because, again, when you go into the investment world, things can go up really quick and they can also go down really quick. So we do have some of TRS does have some of its investments in these various different alternative investment vehicles.
Okay, and then we had in 2022, we had House Bill 385. And this was a bill that allowed retired teachers to go back to work in the classrooms in certain areas. I mean, for example, the system I retired from, we just couldn't find kindergarten and first grade teachers, but unfortunately, those teachers were not included in this legislation, but they were teachers that are in other high need areas. And we did have, at one of the TRS board meetings, we had several hundred retired teachers who went back to the classroom as a result of this legislation.
This legislation, instead of going to, if somebody could mute, please.
When you get out, they go pop your back.
This legislation, right now, without this legislation, you can wait a year and go back as a 49%er, meaning that you can work 49% of the time and draw your TRS. You don't accrue any more benefit or any more, it doesn't change the amount of TRS you receive. Well, this particular bill that's listed here allows you to go back and work 100% of the time. But as Lisa said, it has to be in one of the critical needs areas defined by your local RESA. So you still have to wait a year, but you can draw 100% of TRS and a salary. And you don't have to pay into TRS, but you're not enlarging your TRS benefit package either. And if you're not in the critical needs area, you don't get to go back at 100% at this point in time.
Okay, and then next we can talk about how TRS is funded. Okay, in our first bucket, that is the employee contribution. That is what comes out of your paycheck each month to go into TRS. And you can see that that is a small amount in your overall benefit. Okay, then next we have bucket 2. Your employer contributes also, because you put in you have TRS money taken out of your check each month, but the employer also matches that and they put in for you also. This all goes into the TRS fund, which, they invested and they do a fantastic job investing our money. And the bulk of your retirement income is going to be from those investments. Next slide, please.
So this just shows that over the past years, the amount of the employee contribution, and it's in Georgia law currently that it can be between 5% and 6%. It can't be any more than that.
Okay, because I got kicked out there for a second. Sorry about that.
And then in terms of employer contributions, it varies. And you can see it's gone up over the past few years. And currently for this current year, you can see the numbers for what you contribute, the max of 6%, and then what the employer is contributing.
And as you can see, the employer contributes much more than you do. Okay. Okay, next slide then.
This just shows the investments, which are the mainstay of how your retirement plan gets funded. And you can see, it's up and down
Mhm.
in this. And over the 10 years, the past 10 years, you can see it's constantly going up. So when you read in the Atlanta Journal and Constitution that TRS is going broke, well, that's not necessarily true. And when it's a lot of times the AJC will say something along the lines of TRS is not completely funded. And that is a true statement. If TRS were to close its doors today, it could pay about 80% of what it owes current and past current and future retirees. And so it's kind of like buying a house. When you go through and you pay for a house, you don't have to come up with the money the next day. You pay it out over time, or at least
Mhm.
most people do. And so TRS is not in danger of closing its doors. It's not in danger of not meeting its obligations. And Lisa, I'll do this little one and then I'll be quiet because I like this one.
Yes,
Again,
please.
Thanks. The investment income counts for the most of what you're going to receive. And there are around 20 TRS retirees who are in their hundreds getting a TRS check. And let's just pretend you retired a decade ago. And then 8 years later, you would have gone through and received that amount in TRS benefits. Of that amount that was received, the least of it is your employee contributions. Those tend to be used up in 2 to 3 years after you retire. The next amount that contributes to what you would be receiving are the employer contributions, both from the state and the federal. And then the vast majority of what you are receiving is from the wonderful investment work that TRS does.
This is really important when you look at the amount of money that, with that example, that retiree had received over time over the last 10 years, $370,000. And the retiree really only put in about $46,000. I recently had a conversation with a friend who is not yet retired. And she was just telling me about her plans. She was going to pull out her TRS lump sum, build a house in the mountains, and then live on her Social Security. And I'm like, oh no. We just had a great conversation about why that was a bad idea, and hopefully, and if nothing else, we are getting her to go call TRS, have a conversation, go to Social Security, have a conversation, because your TRS retirement cannot be beaten. I mean, it just cannot be beaten. And you just need to make sure that you leave that in there.
So I'm going to show one last short video from TRS on their website. They have, if you go to multimedia, they have a lot of podcasts that will answer questions and videos. And this one is just a nice wrap up of what we've shared today.
Educators do more than just teach. They fulfill a promise to serve and strengthen our communities, all throughout their careers. At the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia, we think educators deserve a promise too. That's why we're dedicated to helping them retire with confidence and financial security, so they can impact their community even beyond their careers. In 1943, the State General Assembly established TRS to provide retirement security to those who dedicate their lives to educating Georgia's children and adults. Today, TRS is the largest public retirement system in Georgia. In fact, with $80 billion in assets, we're ranked in the top third of all pension funds. We manage hundreds of thousands of active retirement accounts. And while TRS pays more than $5 billion a year in benefits to retired members and their beneficiaries, approximately $8 billion is pumped back into the local communities in the state of Georgia. You see, TRS doesn't only help teachers, we also help to boost our local economy. Every dollar paid in state and local pension benefits goes on to generate an even greater total output. Say a retiree receives a pension payment, then uses it toward the purchase of a home. From contractors and builders to mortgage brokers and real estate agents, everyone involved is put to work, earning and spending money in our local economy. That in turn means even more business, more hiring, more jobs, all right here in Georgia. And remember, the majority of funds in our members' accounts comes from investment income. But unlike 401k and 403b plans, pensions aren't tied to the stock market. Whether stocks go up or down, TRS benefits stay the same from month to month for stability retirees can count on. Our teachers' careers start with a promise. With the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia, their retirement does too. Because the way we see it, a pension is a promise our members can rely on and retire on. Visit trsga.com and learn more today.
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing. I always feel like TRS is in good hands because you're always so knowledgeable about what goes on at the meetings, and I look forward to your May report and all of this. And for those of you again who joined us afterwards, after we started around 9, I will send out links to all the information, including the seminar recording today. So, and it'll include Lisa Underwood's information also. Next, we're continuing more with good news. We have Anise Norman, who is with the Social Security Administration. And Anise is going to share with you about Social Security and then also touch on Medicare. So Anise, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am, Miss Karen, I am. Give me one moment. I'll have everything up on the screen and we will get started here.
Sounds great.
And there we go. And good morning, everyone. My name is Anise Norman, Public Affairs Specialist with Social Security. What I'm going to do is give you a general overview of the things that you need to know and understand when you're thinking about preparing for retirement with Social Security. One of the first things I want to kind of tell everybody is that Social Security, it was never designed to replace your pre-retirement income, because with Social Security, you're only going to receive about 40% from us. So think about whatever you put into Social Security, think about, what you're going to get from TRS. Do you have any other sources like a VA compensation money and a savings or a 401k? And the question you should ask yourself is, will this be enough to sustain you in retirement? Because most financial planners are going to tell you that you're going to need somewhere between 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to live comfortably in retirement. And I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, you'll have a better understanding of what your Social Security piece of the puzzle will be. First up, I'd like to highlight to everybody our newly redesigned webpage. So when you come to visit us at Social Security, you're going to come to www.ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov. This is what you're going to see, and this is where you're going to get the most current and up-to-date information regarding Social Security. What I want to show you is how to find your local servicing Social Security office if the need arises for you to contact them. So from this main page here, I want you to scroll down to the bottom of the page. When you do, you're going to come to the column that says support. Under that column, you want to click on the link that says find an office. Once you click on that link, that's going to take you to a second landing page. Here on this second landing page, of course, we at Social Security, we're going to ask, are you sure you're trying to get to that local servicing office? Because it may be something that you can do by utilizing our online suite of services. So if you really want to, contact that person in the local office, then you're going to scroll to the bottom of this page where you're going to see the link that says locate an office by zip code. Once you click on that link, then that is going to bring you to the Social Security office locator. From here, what I want you to do is to be able to enter your zip code and you press the locate button. Once you press that locate button, what will happen is that it's going to bring up your local office's social security address. Of course, what you're going to be looking for is the local office's 800 number. So that way, if you needed to contact your office, you can contact them directly, or you always have the option of contacting us nationally at the national 800 number, which is 800-772-1213, to speak with a representative so that way they could assist you with your request. Okay, so when we're thinking of retiring, what do you need to know where it concerns Social Security? First step, you need to know that it is personal, because the right time for you to contact us to start to receive that cash benefit from Social Security, that's going to be different for everybody. So you have to look at, what your own needs, how your health is holding up, your financial situation, decide at what point do you want to take your cash benefit. The earliest point that you can start to take a cash benefit from Social Security is age 62. But what you need to understand about that is if you take that benefit early at 62, that is a permanent reduction on the benefit. And then the only potential increases you're ever going to see is going to be those COLA or cost of living increases, which those are going to be determined by the Bureau of Statistics. That's usually done late September or October timeframe. And this is where they look at the last 3 quarters of inflation. And when they look at those last 3 quarters of inflation, they're trying to decide, do they rise to the level that would warrant an increase in benefits? And if so, beneficiaries will see that new dollar amount in the check that they would receive in January of the following year. Now, of course, we know the earliest you can take it at 62, or you could wait until your full retirement age. That is going to be based upon your year of birth, and I will discuss that a little bit later on in the presentation. Or you could be one of those individuals who's trying to max out that benefit, waiting all the way up until age 70 to do so. Another thing to consider is when you do start to take your cash benefit from Social Security, do you plan to go back to work? And if you do, and if you are under your full retirement age, there will be earnings limits that you need to be aware of, and I will discuss those in this presentation. Another thing to consider is, do you plan to enroll in Medicare? Medicare is not mandatory, but what you need to understand is that if you do not enroll in Medicare at the first opportunity that you can enroll, and then you come back later on and say, you know what, I changed my mind now, I want to enroll in Medicare, you need to understand that you may be subject to a 10% penalty for every 12 months that you wait or delay in enrolling in Medicare. Of course, one of the things that I want to kind of encourage everybody to do is, if you haven't already done so, is to create a My Social Security account for yourself. This is going to be our secure suite of services behind our firewall that is going to let you do or conduct a lot of business with Social Security. Some of the things that you're going to be able to see behind that firewall, I'll talk about in just a moment here. But where you want to go to create this account is to our webpage at socialsecurity.gov. Go to My Accounts, and then that's going to give you the option that if you have an account, you log in. If you don't, you can create an account. Now, if you have either a ID Me or a login.gov account, when you go to create that account, you're going to select which option you want to utilize. Because you've already been verified by either one of those two sources, then what will happen is it will take you automatically to your My Social Security landing page. Some of the things that you're going to be able to see behind the My Social Security portal is, number one, if you ever needed a replacement Social Security card, you do that by logging into your account and then requesting it from your My Social Security account. What you'd have to give us is information from either a state issued ID or driver's license. Currently, 45 states are vetted for this process, and Georgia is one of those states. Then once we process that, then your card will arrive in the mail in about 10 to 14 business days. Also, you're going to see when you hit that landing page, you're going to know that you've arrived, because you're going to see that estimated benefit at 62, full retirement age, and up to age 70. But then you'll be able to utilize that calculator that's going to be in front of you, where you can kind of use that sliding scale and go up and down the scale to kind of move the arrow to wherever you think you would be or preparing to retire at. Another thing that individuals can do behind the portal is if they ever needed a benefit verification letter. Say, for example, if you're trying to purchase a new home or if you need it for a service or something, and they've requested, what do you get from Social Security? Well, instead of contacting the local servicing office, you can just simply log into your account and print the letter off from the comforts of your own home. Other things you can do is if you need to update your address, telephone number, start or change direct deposit. If you need to view copies of the letters that you receive from Social Security, we call those notices. You'll have your very own personalized repository, so you can view those here as well. Other things that you can do is if you need a replacement 1099 or 1042 for tax services, tax purposes, or you can request a Medicare card if you need that as well. One of the things that I typically kind of suggest to individuals is at least once a year, log into your account so you can look at your earnings record. When you're looking at your earnings record, what you'll see once you go in is you're going to see the year, and then you're going to see the gross amount of income that was reported to Social Security for that year. If you notice that your earnings that were reported to Social Security are incorrect, well, you will have the opportunity to provide either a W-2 or a tax return. You can upload those to us, and that way it sends us an alert to go back and look at those earnings for that year. So that way, if we need to make any corrections to it, we can do that, because it may make a difference when we go to calculate how much that you're going to get from Social Security with your benefit amount. Okay. Before I kind of touch on this, some other things, let me just back up here for a second. Some other things that you can do behind the My Social Security portal is if you decide to file for retirement, Medicare, disability, or if you're filing an appeal, you can track the status of your application through your My Social Security account. It may tell you you're on, say, step 2 of 4 in the process there. And then once your case is adjudicated to completion, then at that point, you would be able to see the new letter or notice that's going to be available in your repository there for you. So those are just a few things that you can do behind the My Social Security portal. Also, Georgia is they're a pilot state right now, because we have a new process where if you needed a replacement Social Security card, you come to our webpage at Social Security Online, you complete the online Social Security card application. Once you complete that way you can set up and schedule an appointment to go into your local servicing office so that you can provide your documents such as the driver's license or ID, so we can finish processing that request if you needed to go in. And this is a new feature that we've come up with, because in the past we didn't offer appointments for Social Security cards, but now we are doing that. So I think this is going to be a great new feature to save individuals time, so that they're not sitting at the Social Security office waiting an indefinite amount of time to be able to get seen and serviced. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how do you qualify for a retirement benefit. Well, the first thing that you need to know is, of course, we all had to work, but at some point during your working career, you had to have worked for employers who paid into Social Security for you. You're going to know this by looking at those pay stubs, looking if you see that FICA or Social Security taxes were deducted, because if they were, then you contributed to Social Security. So for this year, for 2023, each $1,640 in earnings gives you 1 credit. You can earn up to $6,560. As long as you do that, then you'll get the maximum amount of quarters, which is 4 per year. And the minimum I'm having a moment here. The minimum requirement to be able to get something from Social Security is that you had to have worked a minimum of 40 credits. That means that over your working lifetime, you had to have worked paying into Social Security for a minimum of 10 years. And then when you are age 62 or older, then you would get something from Social Security. But let's figure out what that something is. The way that we do that is that, number one, your wages are going to be adjusted for changes in the wage levels over time. That means that if you had earnings in the 1970s, those are going to be weighed or calculated just a little bit differently than the wages of today. The piece that you need to pay attention to is the second step. This is where we at Social Security, we will pull into the calculation your highest 35 years of earnings over your lifetime. And it does not have to be consecutive years, but we pull in the highest 35 years because there's been a big misconception that a lot of people seem to think that it was the last 5 or the last 10. That is not true. It is the highest 35 years of earnings over your lifetime. So say, for example, if you're that person who only did the bare minimum, you only worked 10 years. Well, that's great. We will pull into the calculation that 10 years worth of earnings. But what you need to understand is that attached to those 10 years of earnings will be 25 zeros, because the calculation will always be based upon your highest 35 years of earnings over your lifetime. And of course, the more 0 years you have, the lower that average index monthly earnings, or what equates out to be your benefit, would be. So just kind of keep that in mind there. Okay, earlier I said 62 was when you could start getting a check, the earliest point you could start to get a check from Social Security. But if you wanted to wait till your full retirement age, that is based upon your year of birth. So take a moment to find your year of birth on the screen here. The middle column will show your full retirement age. What this means is that if you wait until this particular age to contact Social Security to start to receive a cash benefit from us, you would receive 100% of the benefit. If you contact Social Security before this age, then the benefit would be reduced. And this last column here just shows that if a person's benefit at their full retirement age was $1,000, but if he or she elects to take this benefit early, say at 62, then the last column shows how much that benefit would be permanently reduced by. Say, for example, myself, I'm going to fall in the last category because my year of birth is going to be 1960 or later. My full retirement age is 67. If I choose to take my benefit early at 62, then I understand that I'm only going to get 70% of my benefit, because off of the rip, I have chosen to take that benefit early. And as a result of that, that means I get a reduced benefit. I have another example here that we can kind of take a look at here. And this example is going to make the assumption that the individual's full retirement age is 66. But again, I want to use that same $1,000 in this example. So if this individual elects to take their benefit early, say at age 62, then if they take that benefit at 62, then instead of getting $1,000 a month, he or she is looking at receiving $750 per month. Now, let's just suppose this same individual whose full retirement age is 66, they've reached the age of 66, but they're not ready to start to take that cash benefit from Social Security, because for whatever reason, they may still be working, or they may have their eyes on trying to max out their benefit all the way up until age 70. And if that is the case, they can earn what we call our delayed retirement credits. This means that you can earn up to 8% for every 12 months that you wait or delay in taking that benefit, all the way up until age 70. And that's just the point that Congress said that Social Security had to stop the calculation. So if an individual waited until age 70 in this example, then instead of receiving $1,000 a month, he or she is looking at receiving $1,320 per month. Keep in mind that that is the gross amount of the Social Security benefit. And we at Social Security, we do not withhold taxes from your Social Security benefit unless you ask us to do so. And if at that point, we would only withhold federal taxes from your benefit. But again, that is only if you ask us to do so. Now, in addition to the primary number holder, who else can get a benefit off of your record? Well, of course, your child. As long as he or she is age 18 or 19 and still in high school, or if you have a child that's never been married or not married, and we are able to determine that this child has a disability that began before they attained the age of 22, they also could get a benefit off of your record. In addition to your child, your spouse may be eligible to receive a benefit off of your record, as long as he or she is age 62 or older with little or no work history, and we can determine that y'all have been married for at least a year or longer, or your spouse could get a benefit at any age, as long as they're caring for a child that is under the age of 16 or disabled. Now, what I want to talk about is the potential spousal benefit that your spouse may be eligible to receive. If your spouse is eligible to receive a benefit off of your record, they have to meet certain criteria. First up, they have to be age 62 or older with little or no work history. We've established that y'all have been married for at least a year or longer. now, because of the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015, in order for the spousal benefit to be activated, this means that the primary number holder, he or she must, number one, file an application off of their own record, and they have to be receiving their cash benefit. Once they do both of those things, then that opens up the window or the portal, so to speak, for you to be able to come in and apply for a spousal benefit off of their record. And the most that you can ever get off of your spouse's record when they're alive and well is up to half or 50% of whatever they would have received at their full retirement age. But the catch is that you have to be at your full retirement age in order to receive up to the 50%. Now, if you come to us early, say at age 62, then you probably already guessed this, that the amount would be reduced. And then you're looking at receiving somewhere between 30 to 35% of your spouse's benefit off of their record because you've elected to take that benefit early. And there's a common misconception here that a lot of people seem to think, oh, if I take the spousal benefit, it's going to reduce what my husband or wife is going to get. That is not true. It does not reduce what that individual would get. Now, what we have to do at Social Security is we're going to look to see, number one, what can you get off of your own record? If your amount is less than half of your spouse's, we can combine the two amounts to get you up to half of whatever your spouse's benefit would be. But again, that is only if you are at your full retirement age. Let's take a moment here for those of you who may be married. Find your spouse's year of birth. The next column is going to show what your spouse's full retirement age is. This third column is going to show us, going to use that same example again, that if the primary number holder's benefit is $1,000 at his or her full retirement age, then that would mean that the most that the spouse could get off of the record is up to half. So the last column here, this fourth column, shows that if the primary number holder's benefit is $1,000 at their full retirement age, and then the most the spouse can receive off of your record would be up to half, which would be that $500. And of course, the third and the fourth columns both do show that if either the primary number holder or the spouse decided to take their benefit early, say at age 62, it shows how much that benefit would be reduced by. Now, in addition to a current spouse, a former spouse may be potentially eligible to receive a benefit off of your record. But in order for that divorced spouse to be eligible for that benefit, they're going to have to meet certain criteria, meaning number one, you had to have been married to this person for 10 years. And when I mean 10 years, I mean 10 consecutive years of marriage, because many times I'll have individuals say, or come up and say, well, you know, I was married to my ex-husband. We were married for 7 years. We got a divorce. And then I remarried the person. And then we were married for 5 more years. Is that 10 years? No, it is not. It has to be 10 consecutive years of marriage. Then the next thing for that individual to qualify for a divorced spouse's benefit is they have to be currently not married, age 62 or older. And then in this situation, that ex-spouse, the person who you're trying to draw a benefit off of their record, all he or she needs to be is eligible to receive either a Social Security retirement or disability benefit, and they are age 62 or older. They don't have to be receiving that benefit. They just need to be eligible for it. And again, what we're going to do for this divorced spouse is we're going to look to see what can you get off of your own record first. If your amount is less than half of your divorced spouse's, we can combine the two amounts to get you up to half of that your divorced spouse's benefit. But again, you have to be at your full retirement age in order to get up to half. I do have a couple of examples here for us, so let's just take a look at those. First up, I have Ricky and Lucy in this first example. Ricky, he's receiving $1,200 a month. Half of that is $600. His wife, Lucy, she's ready to file for benefits off of her own record. And when she does, we notice at Social Security that she's eligible to receive $1,000 a month off of her own record. So when we do the comparison, we see that Lucy can get a higher benefit off of her own Social Security record. So therefore, she would not qualify for a spousal benefit because she can get a higher benefit off of her own record, and we're always going to pay the higher benefit of the two. And so she would not be eligible for this spousal benefit. So that's pretty straightforward here, but let's take a look at our second example here. In this example, I have Luke and Laura. Now, in this example, Laura, she files for benefits and she's eligible to receive $1,800 a month. Half of that is $900. Well, her husband, Luke, he's been receiving benefits for a while now off of his own record in the amount of $600 a month. Now, because Laura has filed and she has started to receive her $1,800 a month, that opens up the window for Luke to be eligible to receive an additional $300 from Laura's record. So when we add it together, 6 plus 3, that's going to be 9. So that's going to get him up to half of her benefit. Also, if Luke and Laura had any potential eligible children that are eligible to receive a benefit off of Laura's record, they could receive a benefit as well. But one of the things we have to keep in mind is that if for any reason Laura were to decide to suspend her benefit, meaning stop taking that $1,800 a month, if she stops receiving that for any reason, that extra $300 that Luke is getting, that will stop. If they have any eligible children that are receiving benefits from Laura's record, that will stop for the children as well. The exception here is the divorced spouse. The divorced spouse would still be able to continue to receive their benefit. And now what I want to talk about is kind of talking or transition into what potential benefits are available if your spouse were to pass away. So first of all, we're going to look to see who's eligible. Of course, your child, as long as he or she is age 18 or 19 and still in high school, or if you have a child that's not married and we determine that their disability began before age 22, they also would be eligible for a benefit off of your record. Then we have the widow, the widower, or the divorced widow or widower. So what could they receive? Well, they could start to receive reduced benefits as early as age 60, or they could wait until their full retirement age, or they could elect to start to receive benefits at any age as long as they're caring for a child that is under the age of 16 or disabled. And this last bullet here just talks about that divorced widows and widowers may qualify, but remember they must meet the divorced spouse's criteria, meaning that you had to have been married to this person for 10 years or longer, you're currently not married, and you are age 62 or older in order to qualify for that survivor's benefit. So let's take a look at what we're looking at here. So if a person comes to us at age 60 to apply for a survivor's benefit, then they're eligible to receive 71.5% of the deceased worker's amount. Well, if somebody decides to take this, then when they turn age 62, one of the things that we should look at Social Security is, can this person get a higher benefit off of their own record at 62? And then we would switch them to the higher record if that is the case here. Now, if a person waits until age 62 to apply for the survivor's benefit, then they're looking at receiving 82.5% of the deceased worker's amount. Or they could wait until their full retirement age, where they would receive 100% of the deceased worker's amount. This gives them the opportunity to leave their own benefit alone, let it continue to grow up until age 70. Then at age 70, what we at Social Security should do is we should take a look to see, can this person get a higher benefit off of their own record? And if so, then we're going to switch you to the higher record. And then the last bullet here just talks about full benefits are available to both the widow, the widower, and the divorced widow or widower. All we're saying here is if the person who passes away, if they had a current spouse, and as long as we can determine the duration of marriage, the current spouse would be eligible to receive a benefit off of the record. And then if they were divorced from someone who meets the divorced spouse's criteria, they also would be eligible to receive a benefit off of the record. One of the questions that I get quite a bit at Social Security is people are always curious about, if I start to receive a cash benefit from Social Security, can I go back to work? The short answer is yes, you can, but you need to understand what are you up against. So for this year, for 2023, if a person starts to receive their cash benefit somewhere between 62 and before they get to their full retirement age, the earnings limit that you have to pay attention to is going to be $21,240 for the year. Breaking that down on a monthly amount, that comes down to $1,770 for the month. As long as you don't go over, then you're good to go. But if you do, then what will happen is we at Social Security, we will send you a letter in the mail letting you know we paid you too much money. And then the next thing, as you read through that letter, you're going to notice that we're going to say, and we need you to pay us back $1 for every 2 that you went over. So we're going to have our handout saying, gimme, 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 if you go over the earnings limit. Now, in the year where your full retirement age is going to be reached, then the earnings limit, it goes up. So for this year, for 2023, it's $56,520 for the year. Breaking that down, to a monthly amount, I see I got the PowerPoint that has the extra 0 in it, but the monthly amount is $4,710 per month is what it should be, and I apologize for that. But as long as you don't go over, you're good to go. But if you do, it's going to be you're going to have to pay us back $1 for every 3 that you went over. So let's just say, for example, that I'm going to reach my full retirement age this year in August. That means that if I'm getting a cash benefit from Social Security, I can work and earn up to the $56,520 from January 1st through July 31st. So as long as I don't go over that $56,520, I'm good to go. But if I do, I know I need to pay back $1 for every 3 that I went over. And in August, since that's going to be the month where I'm going to reach my full retirement age, even though my birthday is later in the month, but when the first day of August comes around, at that point, there is no limit to how much I can work and earn. Social Security does not care. I can make $1 million and it won't, affect my Social Security benefit. But I can guarantee you at that point, IRS is going to have their hand out because they're going to be wanting their piece of the pie. So just ensure that when you are thinking about going back to work and doing some other things, just make sure that you're talking to your accountant, your financial planner, your tax preparer, because you don't want any unexpected surprises. The other thing that I like to highlight about the numbers that you're seeing on these screens, the screen here, is that when I'm talking about these earnings limits, I am strictly talking about you going back to work, working for an employer who is taking Social Security or FICA taxes out of your pay, or if you decide to go to work for yourself and you're paying self-employment taxes. These limits do not include any pensions, annuities, 401ks, rental income, interest, dividends, none of that stuff. Only talking about you going back to work, paying Social Security or self-employment taxes is what these earnings limits are about here for you. So just kind of keep that in mind. The next question that I typically get asked quite a bit from individuals is whether or not the Social Security benefit is taxable. My response is it depends, because in order for us to kind of figure out whether or not it's going to be taxable, we have to find your combined income. We're going to do that by taking your adjusted gross income from your tax return. We add to that any non-taxable interest that you may have, and whatever your Social Security benefit is, cut it in half, mix it into the pot there. That is going to give you your combined income. Once you have your combined income, then we at Social Security need to figure out, how are you filing your taxes? Are you filing your taxes as an individual or a member of a couple? If you are an individual and if that combined income is less than $25,000, you do not pay taxes on the Social Security benefit. If your combined income is between $25,000 to $34,000, you could pay taxes on up to 50% of that benefit. And if your combined income is more than $34,000 for an individual, you could pay taxes on up to 85% of your benefit. And again, we at Social Security, we like to make you aware of this because this is an IRS regulation, not Social Security. So if you need any additional information with regards of taxation of your Social Security benefit, we would have to refer you to irs.gov. This is where you're going to look for publication number 554, which is the tax guide for seniors, so you can get additional information with regards to that. So I've given you a lot of information. Now that it is time for you to contact Social Security to apply for benefits, how soon can you do it? The earliest that you can contact Social Security is 3 months before you want your benefits to start. And this includes Medicare as well. So whenever you're ready to file for retirement or Medicare, the earliest you can contact us is 3 months in advance. There are 2 ways for you to do this. The easiest, by logging into your My Social Security account and filing online behind that secure suite of services. Or you can always call your local servicing office or utilize the 800 number to schedule a telephone appointment with us. You can rest assured whether you filed online or you're speaking to a representative, you're going to be asked the same series of questions. At the end of the interview, if we need anything such as a marriage certificate, divorce decree, financial information to establish direct deposit, we'll let you know that. And if you filed online based upon your zip code, that is going to tell you what local servicing office to get the information into. But if you're speaking to a representative, then they're going to direct you on how to get that information to them so that they can process it in a timely fashion for you. And usually here's where I tell everybody that if you haven't paid attention to nothing that I have said thus far, perk up now, because you need to know when are you going to get your money. So the first thing we need to understand is that Social Security, we do not pay for partial months. You have to be that age throughout the whole month. And if you're born on the first or the second day of a month, we give you credit for that month. The next thing that you need to understand is that benefits are paid the month following the month that they're due. So say, for example, if you came to us this month in April, filed for retirement, and you said, I want my benefits to start in April, we're going to say that's great. And you get your first payment in May, because we're going to pay 1 month behind. Then depending on whatever your day of birth is, that will determine what Wednesday of the month you're going to get your check. So if your birthday is the 1st through the 10th, that is the 2nd Wednesday of the month. The 11th through the 20th is the 3rd Wednesday of the month. And the 21st through the 31st is the 4th Wednesday of the month. So kind of pay attention to that as you're planning for retirement, so that way you'll know when all of your different streams of income are going to be going into your bank account here for you. Now what I want to touch on is I'm going to just jump straight into Medicare. With what our role is with Medicare from Social Security is very limited. We only do 2 things with regards to Medicare. Number 1, when it is time for you to enroll in Medicare, Social Security, we are the federal agency that you're going to contact so we can take that application for you. Secondly, if you are age 65 or older, and you have already started to receive a cash benefit from Social Security, and you have enrolled in Medicare, then by law, we are required to deduct that Medicare premium out of your Social Security benefit and send it over to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So I tell people the 2 things that we do with regards to Medicare is we take your application and we take your money. That is the extent of what we at Social Security will do with regards to Medicare. So let's look at who can get Medicare. Anyone who's age 65 or older, anyone who's been on Social Security disability for 24 months or longer, individuals with ALS, and then of course, individuals who have permanent kidney failure and receives maintenance dialysis or a kidney transplant are going to be the individuals who would qualify for Medicare. With Medicare, there are 3 different enrollment periods that we need to pay attention to. The first is called the initial enrollment period, or you may hear it called the IEP. What this is your very first chance or opportunity that you get to enroll in Medicare. This is a 7-month window. It starts 3 months before you reach age 65, your birthday month, and then 3 months after, your very first chance that you ever get to enroll in Medicare, the IEP. The next enrollment period that you may want to be aware of is called the special enrollment period, or the SEP. This is going to be for those individuals who may be age 65 or older. And as long as you are covered under a group healthcare plan, either your own or your spouse's, then if you're still working, then when you leave employment, you have 8 months to contact Social Security to enroll in Medicare, and we consider that timely enrollment. And sometimes the special enrollment period is the SEP, if I didn't already say that. Then the last enrollment period that we have to consider is called the general enrollment period, or the GEP. And this is every single year from January 1st through March 31st. Now, the key or the kicker about the general enrollment period is that when a person comes to Social Security to enroll in the general enrollment period, what we at Social Security have to do is we look to see what was this person's first opportunity that they could have enrolled in Medicare, because we have to determine whether or not that 10% penalty will be assessed. The other thing, which was a new change for this year for 2023, is now if anybody enrolls in the general enrollment period in either January, February, or March, then their coverage will start the very next month. Whereas in the past, they had to wait until July of the same year. So Congress tried to make that a little bit easier for individuals. Now, when whatever month you enroll in, coverage starts the very next month for the general enrollment period. But let's take a look to see when would that coverage start if you're in the initial enrollment period. If you enroll 3 months before you reach age 65, your coverage starts in your birthday month. If you wait until your birthday month or 3 months after, then your coverage will start the month after you enroll. So that was a new change for 2023 as well, because in the past, depending on what month you enrolled in, you could have to wait 2 or 3 months down the road for your coverage to start. So now it's just whatever month you enroll in, coverage will start the very next month. So that's a great thing. Now with Medicare, there are 2 different options that you need to consider when you're thinking about enrolling in Medicare. You can either choose Original Medicare. This will consist of Medicare Part A, which is your hospital insurance. And with Part A, earlier when I mentioned as long as you had those 40 quarters of coverage, if you have that, then Part A will cost you nothing. If you have less than 40 quarters of coverage, you could have to pay a monthly premium for Part A. The most that a person could have to pay for Part A, and this is each month, is $506 is what you could have to pay if you have less than a certain number of quarters of coverage. With Medicare Part B, this is your medical insurance, and you're going to use this to go see your doctors and your specialists. With Part B, the base premium for this is $164.90 for this year for 2023, and everybody has to pay for Part B. Also, if you are someone who makes a large sum of money or if you are a higher earner, then in addition to the base premium, you could have to pay an additional surcharge. And I'll talk about that in just a moment here. Now, with Original Medicare, you can choose to add on a Medicare Part D or a prescription drug plan. The cost of that is going to vary from provider to provider. The average cost right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of roughly around $34 a month, and that is in addition to that Part B premium. Now, with Original Medicare, you can choose to add on a supplemental coverage policy or a Medigap policy. Again, the cost of that will vary from provider to provider, and what that's going to help you with is some of those out-of-pocket costs that you may have to pay. Or you can elect to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan. What a Medicare Advantage is, or also known as Medicare Part C, this is where private companies are going to follow the rules for Medicare, and then they're going to offer up, and a lot of times they like to bundle together Part A, Part B, Part D, and then maybe they'll throw something extra in, like say a gym membership, like Silver Sneakers, or a hearing or a dental plan, all for a predetermined cost. And it's going to be up to you to kind of figure out what to do in terms of, do you want Original Medicare or do you want the Advantage plan? And also what I'm going to state here is that recently myself and Alicia Lipscomb, we have been going out with the state when they have been talking to employees with regards to Medicare and about how they're advising you and letting you know that I think they're sending out letters like 4 months and then 2 months before your Medicare age to remind you that you do need to enroll in Medicare because it could potentially affect your benefits. So just kind of be aware of that when you're trying to decide what you're going to do. Also, for basic information with regards to Medicare, go to medicare.gov. And also, if you are thinking about electing a Advantage plan, just remember, even though you want to go to a Part C plan, you still have to come to Social Security first, enroll in Medicare Part A and Part B. Once you enroll, then you go to them, give them your Medicare number, and then at that point, they're going to let you know, they're going to switch you over to the Advantage plan. Yes, ma'am, Karen.
And I will share that you will get information about how to convert from the state health benefit plan. And please pay attention to that. If you choose to go off the state health benefit plan at any point when you retire, you cannot come back on. So I'll send you information from the state health benefit plan also. Again, you'll be bombarded with Medicare information and plans to select, I would encourage you to stay on the state health benefit plan. Thanks, Anise.
You're welcome. And that's great information there, Karen, because we just recently got invited to that. And Alicia and I, we were like, that's huge, making sure that we're letting everybody know you need to take care of this. And I have just a couple of scenarios that I'm going to walk through before I wrap up my Social Security portion, and then see if you have any additional questions for me. This first scenario here deals with if a person starts to take a cash benefit from Social Security, say at age 62. Then when he or she attains the age of 65, do they need to come running into Social Security to enroll in Medicare? The answer is no. And the reason being is that we're going to automatically enroll you in Medicare. So 3 months before you reach age 65, you should get a letter in the mail from us that'll say something to the gist of, congratulations, we've enrolled you in Medicare. You're going to get your red, white, and blue card in the mail. And the next thing you're going to notice is we will start to take money out of your check. So you don't have to do anything. You can just relax and sit back, because we're going to take care of all of the heavy lifting in this scenario here for you. Now, my next scenario, this talks about that if a person is still working at age 65, and as long as you are covered under a group healthcare plan, either your own or your spouse's, then you may have some options here. Number one is what I always tell everybody is talk to someone from HR to determine whether or not your employer requires you to enroll in Medicare. And I believe it is my understanding that even if you are still working at age 65, they do require that you enroll in Medicare Part A. So go back and double check that, because they will require you to enroll in A. Because remember, like I said, A is not supposed to cost you anything. And you're going to tell us, no, I don't want Part B right now because I have insurance through my employer or my spouse's employer. Then when you leave employment, you have 8 months to contact Social Security to enroll in Medicare, and we consider that to be timely enrollment for you. So just kind of pay attention to that. The other thing that I like to highlight for individuals is that if part of your benefits package, if you have the option to enroll in a high deductible health savings account, and this is an IRS regulation, you must stop putting money into that account 6 months before you can enroll in Medicare Part A. And this does include your employer contribution. You got to stop putting money into that account 6 months before you can enroll in Medicare Part A, because otherwise you will be subjecting yourself to IRS tax liability for that. So just pay attention to that. Then once you do leave employment, like I said, you have those 8 months to contact Social Security to enroll in Medicare, and that be considered timely enrollment. But one of the things we try to suggest to people as you're transitioning into retirement, be sure to contact us at a minimum of 2 months before you retire, because you want to make sure that you have your forms in, that we process them that way when you are transitioning, that your Medicare coverage has started, and it's going to be a seamless process, so that way there's no lapse in coverage. The 2 forms that we're going to need you to complete for us is the first one is the L564. This is the employer form. This is where someone from HR will take a look at your record, and they'll look to see when did your health coverage start and what is the expected end date of that coverage. The other form that you're going to need to complete is the CMS form 40B. That's the form where you're going to check and say, yes, I want Part A, and yes, I want Part B. And it is very important that you send these forms back to Social Security together. I tell everybody these 2 forms are happily married. They are peanut butter and jelly, peas and carrots. They're kind of like, Forrest and Jenny. They gotta stick together and come back to Social Security together, because if you send one form without the other, there is nothing that we can do to process your request until we get that second form, and then we will process your coverage at the point we get the second form. We will not go back retroactively, so it's important that you get everything into us at the same time. And let me just kind of reiterate here that failure to enroll timely within that time frame, within that 8 months, it could result in a 10% penalty for every 12 months that you wait or delay in enrolling in Medicare in a timely fashion. Now, my next scenario here is going to talk about that if the person is not working at age 65 and they have not decided to start to take a cash benefit from Social Security, they can do what we call is a Medicare only application. This is where you're going to file that application to enroll in Medicare. What will then happen is that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they will start to send you a quarterly bill to bill you 3 months in advance for your Medicare premiums, and you'll need to pay that directly to them. Now, if you find that you can't pay 3 months worth of premiums at one time, what I'm going to suggest is you go to Medicare.gov and create a Medicare account for yourself. This way you can log into your account, pay your premiums directly to Medicare, but also ensure that your coverage is current and up to date with Medicare. The other option, if you don't want to do that, is they have an option called Easy Pay. This is where you're going to give them information from a checking or a savings account, and then they'll debit that account for you on a monthly basis. Then once you start to take that cash benefit from Social Security, then at that point, we would start to deduct the premiums out of your Social Security benefit. Here on the screen is just an example of what that Medicare page would look like with the links to that CMS Form 40B and the L564. Again, I just want to reiterate, please make sure that when you're sending those forms back to Social Security, that they come back together. Earlier, I mentioned that if you are a higher wage earner, then in addition to the base premium of that $164.90, you could have to pay an additional surcharge. How we at Social Security determine whether or not you're going to have to pay it is we look at your modified adjusted gross income from your tax return, but we look at that from 2 years in the past. So for this year, for 2023, we looked at your 2021 tax return. When we go into 2024, we'll be looking at your 2022 tax return, looking to see where will your income fall, and then that will determine how much or if any extra you would need to pay for Medicare Part B and for Part D. Also, if you are married and if both you and your spouse are enrolled in Medicare, the premium amount that you see on the screen is what each member of the couple would be required to pay. Here on the screen is just an example of the newly revised or revamped Medicare pages. They've made it a little bit easier to kind of flow through and made the understanding of it a little bit easier for individuals. So if you need basic information about what is Medicare, then this is a great place for you to start for that information. Inside of your Medicare account, when you're looking at your information here, you're going to be able to see, like I said, if your premiums are going to be current and up to date. Also, if you have any claims pending, what's outstanding, what's been paid. Then, of course, if you ever needed to speak with a representative from customer service with Medicare, they have an option called Click to Chat, where you'll be able to speak with someone from Medicare for them to resolve whatever your issue may be. And then finally, here on the screen, we're going to have that Medicare card. So for those of you who have not ever seen a Medicare card, this is it, the red, white, and blue card. You're going to see a series of letters and numbers on the card. And of course, whatever you are enrolled in, whether it is Part A or Part B, and then it will show the effective date of the coverage here. And I'm going to pause here for a moment, Ms. Karen, to see, do I have any questions here?
Well, again, Anise, if you will put your information in the chat and I will send it out to people so that, again, the PowerPoint and a couple of handouts you submitted to me, and then people can also reach out to their Social Security office individually with individual kinds of questions. And Anise, thank you. I think you've been doing this for like several years, and it's always really valuable information. So thank you.
It is my pleasure, and I look forward to the next time. You all have a great day.
We are going to go through and do one piece of one segment of not so good information concerning the GPO WEP, and you're going, oh my gosh, what is that? And does it affect me? And our GAE retired president, Tony Smith, will be doing this part of the presentation. And Tony, are you there? Yay. You might be muted if you're saying anything, Tony. And if you're participating today, and you're mind is overwhelmed with information, this will probably continue to put you over the top. Remember, Tony is just the messenger with this, and we'll wind up today with our representative from TRS who will be giving you good information or happy information. Tony's information, not quite as happy at this point in time. So Tony, you're all on.
Okay, hello, everybody. Please remember, I am just the messenger. I'm Tony Smith. I'm a retired educator with 32 years experience, 7 of those years as an education support professional, and 25 of those years as a classroom teacher in many subjects, because when I started teaching, there was a certificate called a generalist certificate. So I've taught reading, social studies, science, computer networking, web page design, and language arts at all grade levels. All right. I just want to review what Anise shared with us, because you got a lot of good information and I don't want you to forget this. You earn your Social Security benefits because you've worked 10 years in a job where Social Security taxes were deducted from your wages. And after working 10 years and paying those taxes, you will have earned 40 credits. So that is when your benefits kick in. Now, if you have worked less than 10 years in a main job that did not deduct Social Security from your wages, you will have no Social Security benefits based on your work record. But many of us worked in systems that did pay into Social Security, so this is not going to impact you. But a lot of us, there are a lot of systems in Georgia, including some very large ones, that do not pay into Social Security. And so I have nothing but bad news for you. Every $1,510 equals 1 credit. You earn a maximum of 4 credits a year. Covered earnings are work-related earnings that are subject to Social Security taxation. Now we're going to talk about something that is not good news. We're going to talk about what we call GPO-WEP. We're going to talk specifically, I'm going to share with you what these acronyms stand for, and then we're going to talk about each one in turn. Both of these, the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision, are pieces of federal legislation. The government pension offset affects the benefits you will receive that Anise told us about based on your spouse's benefits, and the windfall elimination provision will impact your own Social Security benefits. And the way I remember which one is which is GPO ends in O, and the word spouse has an O in it. And windfall elimination provision has an E in it, and the word self has an E in it. And I have to depend on little devices like that because there's been water under the bridge. Let's talk about the windfall elimination provision. If any part of your pension is based on work not covered by Social Security, you may be affected by the windfall elimination provision reduction in Social Security benefits. And this is retirement and disability benefits. So that means because we receive a TRS pension, and if we work in a system that did not withhold Social Security taxes, then we're going to be impacted by this reduction in benefits. There are 15 states in the United States where teachers are not covered by Social Security. The states that are in dark blue or purple, depending on your monitor, are those states where it varies from system to system. But you can see that there's some very large states, California, Georgia, Alaska, Maine, Massachusetts, Louisiana, Missouri, Rhode Island, Colorado, Connecticut, Ohio are the states that are impacted. And there are some large systems in Georgia that are impacted by GPO-WEP because they don't pay into Social Security, like DeKalb County, Clayton County, Fulton County. And the further south you go in Georgia, the more systems there are that do not pay into Social Security. Also, you have to understand that right now, currently, Social Security is not paid for support professionals either who are in these counties. And remember, they don't get a living wage. Many of them only get the public service employees pension. And we know that the PRS benefits are woefully lacking, average $290 a month. So they don't get Social Security benefits or a living wage in retirement. This doesn't just affect educators, it affects public sector employees in many states and municipalities, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, public nurses who work for state hospitals. It impacts them because if they don't pay into Social Security in their main job, then they're and get a pension, and most of these public sector employees do, they will also be subject to this reduction in benefits. So there are 26 states that are affected, and federal employees are affected in every state. In Georgia, Kentucky, and Rhode Island, local municipalities can decide if they want to opt out of the Social Security program. This confuses workers so that a teacher can move into a neighboring school system from a system that paid into Social Security into one that does not pay into Social Security and work the bulk of their career in that system. That means that they're going to be subject to this offset. Firefighters, postal workers, air traffic controllers, federal government employees hired before 1983. This is a big blanket that covers a lot of people. So in 1983, let's talk about WP. The windfall elimination provision can affect how retirement benefits are calculated. If your employer did not withhold Social Security taxes from your salary, your pension will reduce Social Security benefits that you've earned in other employment, in previous employment, or in ancillary employment. So even if you have 40 quarters of Social Security credits, you still will suffer a reduction in benefits if your main gig did not withhold Social Security taxes. So look at your digital pay stub, and if there's nothing in that box for Social Security tax withheld, this is going to impact you. 1.9 million people nationally are impacted by a reduction in retirement and disability benefits. And it says up to 50%, but I'm going to give you my personal example that lets you know that it really is more than 50%. The more years you had and substantial earnings from Social Security covered work, the less the provision cuts your benefits. And let me use my personal example. It says that the law does guarantee that the Social Security benefits of public sector employees cannot be cut by more than half their pension amount. But you've also got to take into account that your Medicare cost will come out of your Social Security benefits that have been reduced. So let me use myself as an example. Because of previous employment, teaching was the second career for me, and because I had ancillary employment, I always worked a part-time job that paid into Social Security. I had earned almost $1,100 in Social Security benefits, but when they calculated my benefits under the umbrella of WEP, after my Medicare costs are covered, I receive $167 in Social Security benefits. That's more than a 50% reduction, but that's legal. So let's learn a little bit more about the windfall elimination provision. I am going to attempt to play a video.
What's the windfall elimination provision for Social Security?
The windfall elimination provision is a rule that reduces Social Security retirement benefits for people who also collect a pension from what's called non-covered employment. Those are jobs in which people do not pay Social Security taxes.
You mean a job in which the employer doesn't withhold FICA taxes?
That's right. Today, most workplaces participate in Social Security, but some state and local government agencies do not. If you have a non-covered pension, but have also worked at least 10 years in jobs for which you paid Social Security taxes, so that you also qualify for Social Security benefits, the windfall elimination provision kicks in. It can reduce your monthly Social Security payment by up to half the amount of your pension, but it never reduces your benefit to zero. The more covered work you did, that is, the longer you paid Social Security taxes, the less the windfall elimination provision cuts into your benefits. To learn more, go to aarp.org/Social Security.
Good overview. So remember that the windfall elimination provision impacts your personal benefits and can do significantly. Now let's talk about the government pension offset, which impacts your survivor benefits that Anise talked to us about, where you have a spouse who has earned full Social Security benefits and predeceases you. The government pension offset affects people who receive spousal or survivor benefits in addition to a non-covered government pension. So that would be me. The spousal benefit can be as much as half of the worker's primary insurance amount. So let's take a look at what that means. A widow or widower at full retirement age should receive 100% of the deceased worker's benefits. Anise talked to us about what early, getting those benefits early, how that can reduce the amount of your spouse's benefits. And so I'm not going to review all of that, but you can see here that if you are age 60, you get 71.5% to 99% of the deceased worker's basic amount and so forth. The government pension offset reduces the amount of your Social Security survivor's benefits by 2/3 of the amount of your government pension. If you receive a pension from a government job, but you did not pay Social Security taxes while you had that job, your Social Security spouse, widow, or widower's benefits will be reduced by 2/3 of the amount of your government pension. And we're going to look at an example. Let's look at Anne. Anne has a pension of $3,000. 2/3 of that pension is $2,000. So GPO applies to Anne because Anne's primary employment did not deduct FICA taxes. So Anne's survivor benefits should be $2,200 because Anne's spouse predeceased Anne, and that was the amount of survivor benefits that Anne should be eligible for. However, because of GPO, $2,000 is subtracted from those survivor benefits. So Anne only receives $200 in survivor benefits. If Anne depended on their spouse's benefits to live independently and with dignity, Anne will not be able to do so if their spouse predeceases them. Is it possible that my survivor benefits can be reduced to zero? Absolutely. It's called a total GPO offset. I am subject to a total GPO offset. If my spouse predeceases me, I will receive no survivor benefits. Therefore, I cannot live independently. 700,000 people are impacted by GPO nationally, 20,000 in Georgia, and it impacts women, low-income employees, often ESPs, disproportionately. It reduces the Social Security or spousal benefits by 2/3 of the public pension, and 9 out of 10 people impacted by GPO have a full offset. They lose the entire benefits. Let's look at a short video. This is from another TRS, Texas, that explains GPO WEP a little more clearly as a summary of everything we've talked about.
Meet Kim. Kim is an assistant principal at a middle school. She's been a TRS member for 12 years. Before becoming an educator, Kim worked as a public librarian for 11 years. While working for the city, Kim paid into the Social Security system. Since she began working for her school district, Kim has not paid into Social Security. Like most Texas school districts, her district does not participate in Social Security. That means Kim is only eligible for Social Security benefits based on her previous employment with the city and through her spouse, who has paid into Social Security for his entire career. Kim is currently reading up on 2 Social Security provisions that could reduce or even eliminate her Social Security benefits. The Windfall Elimination Provision, also known as WEP or WEP, and the Government Pension Offset, or GPO. Because Kim will receive a TRS pension for employment in which she did not pay Social Security taxes, the Social Security benefits she earned from her previous employment could be reduced by the WEP, but not totally eliminated. The amount of the reduction depends on the amount of her earnings and the number of years she paid Social Security taxes. The GPO, however, could offset or even eliminate Kim's spousal benefits if she retires from her current employer. The GPO will reduce her spousal Social Security benefits by 2/3 of her TRS pension. If 2/3 of Kim's TRS pension exceeds the amount of her spousal benefits from Social Security, she will not receive a spouse or widow's Social Security benefit. If you or your spouse has paid into the Social Security system, contact a Social Security representative to determine if the WEP or GPO apply to you. Ask if there are any exceptions to the GPO that could eliminate the offset to your spousal benefits. Be prepared to balance out the potential effects of these provisions, personal savings when you retire.
Okay, that's a summary of everything we've talked about. I have a question in the chat that says if someone worked only 3 years paying into Social Security, does that mean we don't qualify for Social Security benefits? Absolutely. That means you don't qualify for Social Security benefits because you have to have 10 years of Social Security employment to earn the 40 credits you need in order to be able to collect Social Security benefits. So you're not eligible for benefits, so you won't feel this, but those of us who are eligible for benefits will definitely feel this. This is heartbreaking. And if you work in a system that does pay into Social Security, think about your GAE colleagues who are impacted by this, especially our support professionals. And when we ask you to lobby for the repeal of this, please do so. We're talking about Social Security fairness, and there are efforts to repeal the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset comes up in Congress every year. We thought we had it in the 117th Congress. We had enough co-sponsors of the important legislation, but Nancy Pelosi wouldn't bring it for a vote. So we just don't know what happened. What is GAE doing to work toward the repeal of GPO-WEP? Well, we dedicated a couple of No magazines to making sure that our members knew about what GPO-WEP is and the effort to repeal GPO-WEP. So in 2 issues of the No magazine, this one and this one, we highlighted, we explained what GPO-WEP is, we highlighted personal stories, and then what GAE Retired did, our legislative chair, Linda Wolf Smith, sent a copy of these No magazines to every member of our Georgia congressional delegation, along with a letter from me asking them to work as hard as they could to ensure the repeal of these 2 onerous pieces of legislation. NEA is also working very hard for the repeal of GPO-WEP. It used to be a front burner issue, and then it fell by the wayside, and NEA Retired wasn't doing a very good job of holding NEA's feet to the fire about this. And so Georgia is really responsible for energizing NEA Retired and NEA's efforts to repeal GPO-WEP. They had really forgotten about us. There is now a Facebook page, a national WEP GPO-WEP repeal movement Facebook page that GAE is a part of. And in the
Honorable
Congress,
representatives, please help. Retired public servants, including educators, law enforcement, firefighters, and foreign, municipal, state, and federal pensioners respectfully submit a plea to you. We have suffered too long as our Social Security benefits have been diminished or denied for decades, so we call on our elected officials to right the wrong. Please eliminate the windfall elimination provision, WEP, and the government pension offset, GPO. Sadly, the WEP and GPO repeal effort has gone on for too long, and HR 82, the bill to repeal the offsets, has had a shaky history. The bill sat idly in committee for months through the inaction of the Subcommittee on Social Security. In response, a national grassroots volunteer movement took action to repeal the WEP and GPO by securing the 290 co-sponsor threshold to be placed on the consensus calendar. September 2022 was particularly troublesome for HR 82. Upon reaching 300 co-sponsors, the Ways and Means Committee moved to jeopardize the bill, forcing its sponsor to file a discharge petition. We thank legislators who have already co-sponsored HR 82, but to save the bill, representatives must sign the discharge petition in person. We are focused on support for WEP and GPO repeal, and our vote is our voice. If you haven't co-sponsored HR 82 yet, please do so before the November elections. Hear the call of 2,700,000 retired and disabled workers, spouses, widows, widowers, and public servants who are teachers, PSRPs, first responders, veterans, and postal workers, to name a few. Move this pressing matter to the forefront of your legislative activities to show you care, and take the necessary steps. Co-sponsor HR 82 and sign the discharge petition.
okay, and of course, that was aimed at the 117th Congress. In the 118th Congress, HR 82 is there. We have 4 representatives from Georgia who have signed on as co-sponsors for the bill: Sanford Bishop, Austin Scott, Lucy McBath, and Nikema Williams. I don't know what's happening with Hank. I have written and written and written, and lots of us have written. Hank co-sponsored. We had 9 co-sponsors from Georgia in the 117th Congress. I don't know what they're doing, and we need to really hold their feet to the fire. They have promised they would do this. We need them as co-sponsors. 290 is our magic number. And then we can work again if we have to work toward a discharge petition because the current Speaker of the House is not inclined to support this, then we can do that if we have enough co-sponsors. So we have to write, lobby. And I'm going to tell you about something you can do in May that GAE is a part of. Also, the Senate has taken up an action, S597, sponsored by Sherrod Brown, from Georgia. Senator Warnock has signed on as a co-sponsor, but we are really having to work very hard to get Senator Ossoff to sign on as a co-sponsor. We're not really sure where the logic is, but NEA and GAE are working very hard to convince Senator Ossoff that he needs to go ahead and sign on as a co-sponsor of this bill. We need your voice. GAE has met with representatives from Senator Ossoff's office. You see here Judy Polachek, President Lisa Morgan, the representative from Senator Ossoff's office, GAE retired Vice President Doris Glover, and our NEA Director, Jeff Hubbard, who met in person with Senator Ossoff's representative, and Jeff and Lisa have gone to the Hill in Washington to lobby, and we're just not getting the traction we need. And then at the last NEA Representative Assembly, GAE put forth a new business item. I made sure that it was a new business item number 1 or 2, that NEA created a lobbying cadre of 1 active and 1 retired member from each impacted state that the state president, active president, recommends, focus solely on the repeal of the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. It passed, and the NEA Board of Directors allocated $300,000 to support this lobbying effort. And so Vivian Brooks and Daniel Sobchak are our representatives on the lobbying cadre, but GAE has made an even bigger commitment. On May 16th, NEA has a day of action that is focused solely on the repeal of GPO-WEP. The lobbying cadre will be in Washington, and GAE is not just sending Vivian and Daniel, but President Lisa Morgan will be there. NEA Director Jeff Hubbard will be there. I'm not sure, but I think our chief lobbyist, Joe Fleming, will be going. We will be sending a delegation of 5 people who will knock on doors, who will push to get the Georgia delegation and other representatives to co-sponsor this legislation to repeal GPO-WEP. Now, what do we need to do to pave the road for them? We need to, on May 16th, clog the phone lines, fill up the voicemails, fill up the email mailboxes. We need to send snail mail letters that will arrive on the 16th. We need to call their local offices and leave messages. We need to do everything in our personal power to pave the road for our delegation and the NEA lobbying cadre so that when they get to the Hill in Washington, these people will say, okay, all right, enough already. I'll sign. So this is what we need from you. We need your efforts to help us to get these 2 pieces of legislation repealed. Even if it doesn't affect you personally, it affects those educators who have given so much of what they do to the children of Georgia. So the question was about a boilerplate email, a template that we can send. Closer to the 16th, there will be. And if you, when you get this presentation in your email, if you look at that video that was aimed at the 117th Congress, you can just parrot that language in your email too. If you want to go ahead and start writing and say, okay, I dedicate myself to 5 minutes every day to send a message to my legislators that I want them to get off the fence and co-sponsor this legislation and push for it to come to a vote, then copy that and then look for an alert from GAE that will have the boilerplate language and a click and send that you need when we get closer to the 16th. Are there any questions? I'm sorry for the bad news.
Tony, again, I will be sending out your contact information that I'm sure you'll put in the chat also. Tony is one of our resident experts on this issue, so please do reach out to her. And she's so modest in all of this. She personally was responsible for making sure the language got to NEA and the representative assembly through the state channels first. So big appreciation. I too am a WEPer and impacted by GPO WEP. So write early and often, as Tony suggests. Our last presenter this morning before we close out is Mike Zorum, the representative from TRS. He brings good news this morning as you get closer to retirement, and will explain all the options and what you need to do to make sure that TRS check comes to you. So Mike, thank you so much for being here this morning.
My pleasure, and I'll go ahead and try and share my screen here.
The technology gremlins have been available for other people and hopefully not for you.
Yeah.
I see, yep, there's the PowerPoint.
Is it showing up on your full screen there?
It is. Something about Facebook.
Fantastic.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. If you would, I think it works best if you put your questions in the chat box, and then I or Karen can pluck them out at the end and answer them until we're out of time. But we'll look at the retirement options today, which you'll select when you're within 6 months of retirement. You'll give us your selections. We'll cover what creditable service is. You know, the more of that you have, the larger your benefit will be. It's part of the formula. And then lastly, we'll look at beneficiary issues. So you know better than anyone else how challenging your teaching job has been, and you certainly deserve some great benefits. I meet with a lot of certified financial planners, licensed financial advisors across the state, and nearly all of them say the same thing. They wish they personally had your benefits. So it's hard to get a better endorsement than that. It's important to understand that what you get from TRS has nothing to do with the ups and downs of the stock market. You don't have to worry about that with your TRS benefit. Now, obviously, if you're in a 403B or 457, it's another matter, but at least with what for many is the foundation of their retirement benefit, the ups and downs of the market would not cause you any anxiety in terms of, you know, your monthly benefit check. Oddly enough, your TRS benefit is also not a function of the money you put in. Your account balance, the money that came out of your check and the interest, has no bearing on how much you're going to get from us. It's all centered on a formula that we're going to look at shortly. And it is a benefit that's guaranteed for life. It can't be taken away from you. It can't run out like a 403B might. We have over 9,000 retirees collecting who are over 85 years old right now. We have over 3,000 that are over 90, and we have 70 retirees who are over 100 that are still collecting from TRS. So let's look at that formula shortly. First, though, let's look at some decisions you have to make. There are 7 different plans of retirement, And we'll go over each one of those in more detail in a few slides. You have to decide which one. There's cost of living adjustments as long as we have CPI inflation. And then there's also a decision you have to make as to whether or not you want a partial lump sum option plan distribution. And we'll go over all of these so that you can make the best decision for yourself. Here is that formula. We take your years of creditable service, and you can have partial years. In fact, most teachers do at the end of their careers. It's your day-to-day membership service that you accumulate in monthly increments. It's your unused sick leave credit if you have at least 60 days at the end. And then it's the whole category of service purchases, things, time you can buy if you're eligible under the law. And we'll go over each of those 3 things later. But whatever your total is, we multiply that amount by 2%. Then we look at your high average salary. That's your highest consecutive 24 months of pay. It's a rolling average. It doesn't have to start or end with the school year. It doesn't have to be the last 24 months of your career. Quite often it is. It's because we've accumulated more raises and promotions, but quite often it's anywhere in your career. So we'll multiply that all together, and that generates the maximum plan of benefits that you can get, the max plan. All the other benefits that we have available are going to be some sort of actuarial reduction from whatever your maximum benefit happened to be. It's all based on your age and the age or ages of your beneficiaries at the time of retirement. Now, some nice things do not happen when you start getting a check from TRS. And those things are deductions that you're used to seeing now do not come out of your TRS check. So there's no payroll taxes. So there's no Social Security coming out if you had that prior to retirement. There's no old age survivor disability insurance. There's no Medicare component. And that in full is over, I think, 7.6% that you wouldn't see coming out. There are no state taxes on the first $35,000 if you are over age 62. Age 62 and up, you get a state tax exemption on the first $35,000 of your income. That exemption jumps to $65,000 once you're retired, living in Georgia, getting a pension check from us. So the vast majority of our retirees living in Georgia don't pay any state tax. There's no TRS that comes out of your TRS check. So that's 6% right there. There's no 403B or 457 deductions. So when you added all the deductions that don't come out, it helps your check in retirement look more close to what it was while you were working. Now, there is one deduction which I think you all would want to see. I'm assuming you're all K through 12 teachers in the audience. That your state health benefit plan, health insurance deductions can continue. As long as you had them prior to retirement, you can continue it into retirement and it'll come out of your TRS check as a deduction. And that's a great benefit. It's a lifetime benefit. You know, if you're under age 65, it's the same premium that active teachers pay. Once you hit 65 and you're retired, you would transition to a Medicare Advantage plan. I don't know if anyone was on your agenda to talk about that, but it is a marvelous benefit. Our only role in the whole process is that we pull the money out of your check and send it to the health plan. All right, and it is lifetime coverage. as long as you don't pull out. So you can retire at 30 years of service at any age. Now, under the formula, you can go all the way up to 40 years and get 80% of your pay. The only thing that's magic about 30 is that at any age you could retire. I mean, I've talked to people who are 48 years old. You know, they got out early with unused sick leave, and they started very early in their career. Maybe you started later in your career. For those folks, there's another threshold of 10 years at age 60. Now, obviously, the more years you have, the larger your benefit will be, but these are the two minimum thresholds. If you were to become disabled and couldn't perform your TRS covered job as determined by the TRS Medical Board, you could start your benefit early without any kind of early retirement penalty, provided you had at least 10 years of covered service at the time of disability. Now, if you want to get out early, you know, before those two thresholds that I mentioned, you can do that up to 5 years earlier, but with that would come a penalty. So this would be for people who have at least 25 but less than 30. They're under age 60. Obviously, if you were 60, all you would need is 10, and you wouldn't be subject to any penalty. And simplifying it a little bit, we're going to look at two things, and we're going to apply the penalty where there's the smallest penalty to you. We're going to look at your age, and we're going to look at your length of service. For every year you're under 30, there's a 7% penalty from whatever your normal benefit would be based on the formula. And then based on length of service, for any year you're under 30, it's 7% from whatever your normal benefit would be. So you can have up to a 35% penalty if you're leaving 5 years early. So not many people take this, maybe 3 or 4% of our retirees, but it is there in the event that it is something you need to execute. If you do take an early out, your COLAs are delayed until you would have had a normal retirement. So keep that in mind too. Here are the smorgasbord of different retirement plans you have to select. You'll actually make this selection up to 6 months before your planned retirement date. If you want to make sure you get your first check on time, which I'm sure most of you do, you want to give us 2 full months prior to your effective retirement date in order to process your application. So you're really looking at a 4-month window, 6 months out to 2 months out, where you want to go online and give us all your decisions. And ultimately there's still some paper forms to fill out and get sent in. And you want to do that 6 to 2 months out. I think in the very first step, when you're trying to decide what option is best for you, I think it's easiest to divide all 7 options into 2 different groups. The first group, Plan A Maximum and option 1, do not provide any lifetime benefits to survivors. So when you pass away, no monthly benefits go to them. And in lieu of that, you're getting a larger monthly benefit while you and any dependents are living. And then we have all the survivor options that leave varying amounts of lifetime monthly benefits to your covered survivors. Should you pass away first, then they would continue to get as much or a percentage of your benefit for the rest of their lives. And we can look more in depth in the next few slides. Conceptually, as we talk about these options, it's very useful to think about your account with TRS as if it were 2 buckets of money. One bucket I'll call your bucket, and it's got all your contributions and interest in it. All the money that came out of your paycheck, that 5 or 6%, plus all the interest we've been paying you, 4.5% going into your bucket. We never use or keep any of the money in your bucket. It's either going to go back to you in the form of your monthly benefit, or it'll go to a survivor. And then we have what I'll call the TRS bucket of money. And that's got all the contributions to TRS from your employers. And it's got all the return on investment money that's needed to pay you a lifetime benefit for you and any covered survivors once your bucket of money runs out. Your money runs out after about 2 or 3 years. The TRS bucket never runs out for you and covered beneficiaries. So it's conceptually, I think, useful to understand this as we talk about how the options work and then how we process some beneficiary issues. So here's a description of the maximum and Plan B1. You've seen the maximum plan. You saw the formula earlier. That's what the maximum plan is. If you were to take the maximum plan, and 2 out of 3 retirees do, it's about 67%. About 3 to 6% of our members take all the other ones we're going to talk about. But if you do take the maximum and you pass away before the money in your bucket is used up, it would go in a lump sum to your designated beneficiary. Remember, no lifetime benefit, but you're getting the most you can from TRS, which is that formula benefit we looked at earlier. Now, for a slight reduction, it might be 1% or so of your maximum benefit. For that reduction, you could take Plan B option 1, where we extend the life of your bucket of money from that 2 to 3 year period to 10 to 14 years. And the advantage to you is that if you were to die anywhere up to that 10 to 14 year period, there'd still be money left in your bucket to leave in a lump sum to a designated beneficiary. And the way it works out, mathematically, is that your very first benefit checks come out of both buckets of money, the TRS bucket and your bucket. So the end result is your bucket of money lasts longer. But remember that none of these leave a monthly benefit to covered survivors. So before we look at options 2 through 4, conceptually, I think it's useful to understand that the dynamics of the options work very much like what I called in grade school a teeter-totter. Maybe it's I'm from the Midwest, maybe it's a seesaw here in the South, I'm not sure. But that's the dynamic where the more you want for yourself, the less is available for others, and vice versa. The more you want to leave to your beneficiaries, the less you get per month. And there's no right or wrong answer here. It's whatever's best for you and your family. All these plans have what's called actuarial equivalence, which means that from an actuarial standpoint, regardless of the plan you select, it's going to cost TRS the same amount of money. It's in terms of lifetime anticipated payout. You can really think of it like your bundle of money is a balloon filled with air, and you can squeeze it on one end, it'll bulge out on the other, and vice versa, right? But it's still the same amount of air or money in your balloon that you're getting from TRS. So option 2 is a very rich benefit for your beneficiary in that whatever you are getting at the time you pass away is the starting benefit for your beneficiary. So for example, at retirement, you took option 2, and then later you pass away and you were getting $4,000 a month from us, then your beneficiary would start with that same $4,000. Being that it's a rich benefit, you take a larger reduction while you're both living. I would say typically it's 15 to 30% less from your maximum. And remember, the reductions are sensitive to your age and their age. Option 3 leaves your beneficiary 1/2 of what you were getting at the time you pass away. So in our example of $4,000, if you had taken option 3 at retirement, you would leave your survivor or survivors half the $4,000. And if my math is correct, that's a $2,000 a month benefit for your survivors. And the advantage to you while you're both living is that you're getting more money from TRS. Instead of that 15 to 30% reduction, I'd say it's more like a 5 to 15% reduction. But everyone's going to be different. You don't know what your reduction is until you actually look at your benefit estimate, which you can get up to 5 years early. We do recommend you get one when you're 2 years out. Okay, both options 2 and 3 have what's called a pop-up version. Under the pop-up version, you can only have one primary beneficiary. Under all the other options we offer, you can have as many as you want. But if you want one of these pop-ups, you can only have one. And if that one primary beneficiary passes away first, then your benefit as the retiree, as the name implies, pops up to the maximum plan of benefits. Typically what I see is maybe a $300 or $400 a month pop-up. It doesn't cost a lot to add a pop-up to the respective option. Maybe you're in a situation where you know in retirement you're going to be depending upon maybe some income from a spouse. And if that income were to stop, you'd want to replace some or all of it. Maybe one way to do that is through a pop-up. Typically, when someone passes away, you don't need more money, you need less money, right? So consider how a pop-up may or may not make sense for your situation. And you can have a pop-up whether it's option 2 or 3. Otherwise, the option works exactly the same as option 2 or 3. And then last but not least, we have option 4, which within certain IRS and TRS constraints allows you to leave a customized amount to a beneficiary. You can leave a specified dollar amount or a percentage of your benefit. So maybe the options we just discussed don't work best for you and your family. You could leave, say, 33% to a spouse or a child, whoever. You could leave 75% instead of the 50 or the 100. Or maybe you want to leave a fixed dollar amount, like 1,000 or 500, whatever your calculations say where it needs to be. So you can really fine tune this teeter-totter ride and determine exactly within limits what you want per month while you're living and what you want to leave to a covered survivor. So if you're more sophisticated in your retirement planning, this may be the option for you. And you can get estimates where you let us know ahead of time what you want, and we'll plug it in for you. So we're going to do a little exercise here. Normally it's audience participation when we do this in person. So I'll answer the questions myself, but I will give you a couple seconds to think about it. And the reason we go through this exercise is because, at least I think it's a great way to approach making the decision yourself, in terms of what option is best for me. So in scenario one, we have Mary who has no dependents and no one depends on Mary's income. So if you were Mary, what option might you reasonably select? Well, the idea here is that since no one's going to experience a financial hardship should Mary pass away first, Mary would reasonably select the maximum plan. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. No one's going to have a hardship, you know, if that TRS pension stops. So why take a reduced benefit? Unless you have money to burn, right? But that's not the typical teacher scenario. On the other hand, we have Sue, who has a spouse, but the spouse has no savings. The spouse won't be getting any pension, won't be getting any Social Security, and despite all his efforts, has yet to win the lotto. And for the sake of discussion, we do have to assume that Sue, in fact, loves her spouse. And I know that may be stretching it, but here we're going to do that. So if you were a loving Sue, what option might you select from TRS at retirement? Well, the idea here is that loving Sue wants to protect her spouse financially, who's not going to be getting anything, right? So Sue would reasonably select the option that provides the most protection for her spouse, which would be option 2. So the spouse would be getting the same amount that Sue was when she passes away. And then our last scenario is Tom, who also has a spouse, and that spouse will be getting a pension and will be getting Social Security. But when they run the numbers, the spouse is still $500 short of meeting her income replacement needs if Tom dies first. So if you were Tom, what option might you reasonably select? Well, the idea here is that Tom would take option 4 and specify a $500 a month benefit, which would essentially be a safety net for the spouse if Tom dies first, because then TRS would send that $500 to the surviving spouse so that ends could be met, while at the same time, while Tom and the spouse are both married and living, they're maximizing what they can get from TRS, while also providing that minimal safety net. Of course, it doesn't have to be a minimal safety net. You can make that amount, whatever you want within the IRS and TRS limits. All right, you have now decided what option you want. You are now option experts. Congratulations. Your next decision is to decide whether or not you want to take one of these partial lump sum option plan distributions, or PLOP for short. You're leaving a lump sum distribution of money in the form of a check after retirement in lieu of a permanently reduced lifetime monthly benefit. I would say on average, for every $1,000 of PLOP that you want to leave, if any, then your monthly benefit is reduced $7 to $10 a month for each $1,000 of PLOP you want to leave. So really it is rather expensive, but it's available to you if that makes sense. About 10%, 1 in 10, take one of these PLOP distributions at retirement. And the average gross amount of a PLOP is in the neighborhood of $65,000. You can do anything you want with that money. You could pay off high interest credit card debt, which might make sense. You could buy a depreciable asset. You could use it as a quasi life insurance sort of instrument. You could spend it on travel, anything you want, as long as what you have left is going to meet your needs. You may want to talk to a licensed financial advisor if you're interested in one of these. to see if it does make sense for you. Beware of people who encourage you to take a plop out and invest the money through them. They may not have your best financial interests in mind. You know, it may be a high commission kind of proposition for them. So please keep that in mind if you're considering one of these plops. Now, plop money that you take in hand, you know, at the time of retirement is taxable. And if you're under age 55 in this case, there could even be a 10% penalty tax on top of normal state and federal. But you can defer any and all taxes by rolling that money over in whole or in part into another qualified retirement plan, like IRA at your local bank. I'm sure your 403B, if you're in one with your school system, would also take a direct rollover, and you would not pay any taxes on that distribution until you receive the funds at a later date. And make sure it's a direct rollover as opposed to indirect. You don't want to actually touch any money. It goes directly to that IRA or 403B. Now, the cost of living, or COLA, is one of the jewels of your TRS retirement plan, because as long as there is inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index, our board shall award you a 1.5% COLA every January and July. And it does compound on itself. So technically it's a little bit more than 3% a year. And you are cycled into this. Your very first COLA will take anywhere from 7 to 12 months to start, depending on your retirement date. But you can see here at the bottom of the slide, if you're a January 1 to June 1st effective retirement date, you get it the following January, which means for the typical classroom teacher, you finish at the end of May. And TRS says your effective retirement date is always the first of the month following your last day of actual employment. So you'd be June 1 retirees and only have to wait the 7 months to get your first COLA. But let's say you had a weather day to make up and you had to do something on June 1, well, then you're a July 1 retirement and you have to wait the full 12-month cycle, okay? And it could be anywhere in between, just depending on when you opt to retire. You know, this is a very powerful benefit. Even though from one COLA to the next, you may not notice much of a difference. After you've been retired, your benefit is doubled after about, or it's up 50% rather, when you've been retired 12 to 13 years. So quite often when I meet retirees, they come up to me with a big smile saying, you know, they're now making more from TRS than they did while they were working because of these cost of living adjustments. So let's look at a benefit estimate. And in this example, the person's retiring in June of 2025. The high average salary was $58.33. And remember, we take the rolling average of the high 24. And this member basically told us, I think, that they want to retire with exactly 30 years and then get out. So here, based on the formula, we've got 30 years times 2%. So they're going to get 60% of that high average salary. The high 24 months is $58.33. And when you multiply it all together, it comes out to exactly $3,500 a month. Now we're going to carry that over into the actual benefit estimate. And we do recommend you get one of these when you're 2 years out. And then remember, you apply when you're 6 months out to 2 months out. So you get your first check on time, the middle of the month in which you retire. So this is what the top half of a benefit estimate looks like. All the assumptions go up on the top half. It'll show you your projected retirement date and age, when we pulled your high salary, those 24 months. If you want to assume an annual increase, you can, or you can leave it at 0. The system will show you your minimum and maximum plop amounts, how much service you have when we run the estimate, how much more is projected. That's your anticipated membership. Anticipated sick leave. We don't know what your sick leave is until your employers report it to us before and even after you've retired. All your prior employers, you might as well go ahead and get that sick leave certified now, get it into your file, and then you don't have to worry about it right at the time you're retiring. Your very last employer will report to us your unused sick leave electronically. But for any priors you might have had, you can email them the sick leave. It's called an unused sick leave certification form. It's on our website, which is www.trsga.com. And you go to the forms tab and you can download. It's a writable PDF, so you can fill your section out and then email it to the payroll person or benefits person at your former central office. They know what to do with it. They'll fill it out. They'll email it back to TRS, and then it's in your file. And you have to initiate these things. It's not coming from TRS. And again, with your last one, when you're applying online, you'll click a box saying you want to pursue sick leave with your last employer. We email them, and then they email it back to us without you having to fill out a form for them. All right. And anticipated other service, that would be like a service purchase. If you wanted us to include time for that, we'll look at service purchases later. So total service at retirement will be 30. So let's go to the bottom half of the estimate and see what that looks like. Here's where we list out what the member and all the beneficiaries are going to get per month. It also shows you what the plop reduction would be per $1,000 of plop. And you can see here how under the various options, there are benefit reductions. And you can see too what the primary beneficiary would get if the member were to pass away first. Now in the pop-up options, if you look at Plan B option 2 pop-up, which is about a $23 a month reduction from the option 2 benefit. But let's say the beneficiary dies first under Plan B option 2 pop-up, then the member's benefit is going to pop up from that $3,250 amount to the $3,500 amount. Same with option 3 pop-up. That's how that works. But if the in either option 2 or the pop-up, if the member passes away, the beneficiary will get either the 100% or the 50% amount, like in the regular options. With option 4, you can customize that. We throw in typically a courtesy example where the member wanted a $500 a month benefit to go to the primary, and that reduced the benefit by $35 a month. So you could let us know ahead of time, if you wanted one or more option 4 benefits. So that's how you read your benefit estimate. We do recommend at 2 years out, because if something doesn't look right, then there's still plenty of time to get it fixed. and it's close enough where it will tend to be rather accurate in terms of the projection. We do have, if you are within 5 years of benefit eligibility, on the website, remember that's www.trsga.com. There is what's called a generate benefit estimate tool. And you do have to have a registered account. If you don't have one already, you're going to need to know your TRS ID number. You can call and we'll mail it to you if you don't know what it is. And then you create your own user ID and password. You can go on the site, use that tool. It's the same software we use on our end to goof around with different scenarios. You might want to see how much more am I going to get if I work an extra year, or if I change beneficiaries, what impact would that have? You can tell the computer you want to retire when you have exactly 30 years or when you're exactly 60 years old, and it'll backfill the, when the date you could retire, for example. So it is a powerful tool if you have questions about what your benefit would be under different scenarios. I guess this is a good time too to mention that we have online a number of publications. A popular one is this TRS members guide. This is the cover. Go to the website and click on publications, and then under members guide you could read a lot more detail about things that we've covered today. There's a sick leave chart in here, and I'll talk about sick leave in a couple minutes. So it's a very useful document. You could download it or print it out, and that is the TRS members guide. So start thinking about what option's best for you and your family. We talked about generating your own benefit estimate. We're back to offering in-person counseling. I understand you may be in the audience from all over the state. We do have a office complex in Macon. It's part of some old BIB BOE buildings off Riverside Drive. You can go there, or you can come to our Atlanta office. We're just north of Georgia Tech, or we can do benefit estimates with you virtually through WebEx or FaceTime or just a good old-fashioned phone call. And you can go online and set those up through your account as to date and time for getting your own estimate. All right. Let's talk about creditable service. Remember, this is part of the formula, and the more of this you have, the more you're going to get from us. Your day-to-day service is measured in monthly increments. As long as you work half the days of the month, then you get credit for that month. And in TRS, we have a 9-month year that starts with our fiscal year and ends with our fiscal year end date. That's July 1 through June 30th. And once you've accrued, excuse me, 9 months in that 12-month period, you have 1.0 years with TRS. Now, obviously, you're all working 10, 11, or 12 months. Unfortunately, you don't get service credit, for more than a year in a given fiscal year. But if you have a longer term contract, let's say you're a 12-month contract, you can accrue more unused sick leave than your 9-month or your 10-month or 11-month counterparts. And if you don't use that sick, you will end up getting a larger benefit from TRS because of your longer contract type and your larger accruals of sick leave. You can have up to 1.25 days accrued per month per your contract type. You're not going to see your sick leave credit on your first check. It's usually your second one, but we do send you a retroactive payment because remember, we don't process your sick leave until just after you've retired, because you might get sick right before you retire, and then the whole calculation would be inaccurate. So to avoid that administrative inefficiency, we process your sick leave afterwards. If records are missing, we do everything possible to give you estimated credit for that time. We take the average number of days unused per year based on the records that exist, and then we apply that average number of days to the period of time that records are missing. And we take your estimated days, add it to your recorded days, and then we get a total number of days. And then we go to this chart, and don't, like I said, feel a need to frantically write this down. It's in that members guide I showed you, page 26. You can look it up. In fact, it's a more expanded chart because there is no limit to how much unused sick leave you can have. I just ran out of space on the slide. I've seen someone who had 4 years of unused sick leave credit. Remember, the only cap you have to worry about is 40 total years. You can't go over 40 when you include your time worked, your membership service, service purchases, and your unused sick leave credit. And we have had people where we couldn't give them all of their unused sick leave because it would have put them over 40. So how do you read this? Well, if you have under 60 days, you don't get any extra credit from us. And if they award you sick leave in hourly increments where you work, simply divide your time by 8, and then you will get that converted to days, and you can use the chart. And remember, we have a 9-month year, which helps you out here, because let's say you had 60 to 69 days, you get 3 months credit, which is 0.333 years added to your total. And that goes into the formula. And you get that extra 2% on that third of a year. It's 3/9 of a year. So if you had 170 to 189 days, that's 9 months or 1.0 TRS years. So in that scenario, you could work 29, we'd add 1 year of sick, you'd get up to 30. Or you could work it the other way. You could work 30 years, get 1 year added, and you'd have a 31-year benefit. So instead of the 60% of your high salary, you'd get 62% of your high average salary. So what if you had 190 days? Well, that's 1 year and 1/9 of a year added to your total, or 1.111 years would get added. And that's how we're going to apply your sick leave benefit just after you've retired. All right. So now let's talk about service purchases. You can't just buy, any kind of prior employment. It has to be eligible under the law. And all those, I don't know that we'll hit on every one of them today, but there is a list in that members guide I mentioned earlier. Many of you might have already had a cost calculation, because as the name implies, it does involve a purchase. But I can tell you quite often this has a cost benefit calculation that is very favorable to you, potentially. Some, your break even may be when you're going to be much older, and you may not feel it's worthwhile. Again, this is a scenario where if you're uncomfortable in making the calculations or the decision, look to your 403B rep, whoever you have at your school, or whoever your licensed financial advisor is. They'd be happy to help you with these calculations. They do them all the time. If you get a cost calculation, you're under no obligation to buy it. They're free to you. It just takes time and effort on your part. In some cases, like with out-of-state purchases, it may take a good bit of time and effort. let's start with that one. Let's say you taught at an out-of-state public school or university, and you're not going to be getting a pension from them. You can buy up to 10 years of that out-of-state service. Maybe you have a year in Alabama or 2 years somewhere else. You're not going to be getting a pension from that other state. So why not convert it to Georgia time and actually get paid a lifetime monthly benefit based on that short period of time you had in a different state? That may be very cost beneficial to you. And perhaps even more cost benefit favorable to you is this TRS withdrawn service, where you worked for a while and you quit. And when you quit, you withdrew the money in your bucket, you cashed out. And then you later came back. Once you've been back 3 years, the law would allow you to buy back the time you cashed out on. You simply give us the money we gave you, plus 7.5% interest from the time you had the money to the time you pay it back. All right. It doesn't take too long to recoup your money in those scenarios, maybe 2-3 years. Plus you get back any forfeited unused sick leave time you had on that time you cashed out. That's called withdrawn service. So if you have any of that, I strongly urge you to consider picking it up prior to retirement, because you can't buy service post-retirement. And there are a multitude of others. There's military time. You can buy up to 5 years of active duty service if you're not going to be getting a pension from the military. If you were a state employee here in Georgia, under ERS, you can buy your ERS time and move it over to Georgia. If you taught at a private school in Georgia, you can purchase that as long as it was accredited, but it's extraordinarily expensive, as is something called airtime, where if you have 25 plus years of service and in conjunction with the retirement, you can buy up to 3 years of time just because you want to. But just to give you a ballpark idea of the expense, and this is not how we calculate it, but to just give you a general ballpark idea, for every year of airtime you want to buy, it costs in the neighborhood of 1 year of your TRS benefit. So if you're going to get $40,000 a year from us, 1 year of airtime would be in the neighborhood of $40,000. So not many people buy it, but you should know that it's at least there, to see if it makes sense for you. All right. So if you do buy, it's just like you did work in the classroom or whatever your TRS covered position is. Sometimes people buy service to avoid the early retirement penalty if it's there. Obviously, your benefit's going to increase just like you were doing TRS covered work, but the longer you wait to buy it, the more it's going to cost. So it may make sense to buy sooner than later. Oops, that went the wrong way. So here's some recommendations. Go ahead and get, this mentions forms. We do have the old paper forms if you want to use snail mail, but go ahead, if you want to be efficient, use the writable PDFs, get them out to your former employers, not your last one, but prior ones, and get it into your file now so you don't have to mess with it later. Update cost calculations or get one. Don't wait too close to the end. It's not uncommon for out of state to take over a year. I've seen it have 2 years or more for out of state. Some of them, like buying withdrawn service, that might be a 30-day process, but don't wait till the end. Some people think, I'll just take care of it right at the end, but then they have to delay their retirement because the service purchase hasn't been executed prior to their retirement. So our last issue of the day is beneficiary issues. And then we can take questions until Karen tells me I have to go home. Oh, wait, I am at home. I have to go somewhere else. All right, so there's primary and secondary. We'll look at the differences between them. What happens if you die while you're actively working or within 4 years of having quit and waiting for your pension to start? When can you change beneficiaries or options, after you've retired? So if you want someone to get a monthly benefit, they have to be primaries. So if you want multiple folks to be primaries, you would list multiples and indicate what percentage you want to go to that individual. You can divide it up any way you want, as long as it reaches 100%. You should also designate one or more secondary beneficiaries. Secondaries are not eligible for a monthly benefit, except in a rare scenario. Why do you have secondaries? Well, you could have a situation where you and your primary are deceased and there's still money left in your account, in your contribution account, your bucket of money. Remember, we never keep any of the money in your bucket. So if there is some left when the primary and you are deceased, we would pay a lump sum of what's left in your bucket to your secondary beneficiary. So you can see it's important to have one and that it's not the same person as your primary. All right. If you die in active service, that means you died while you were working before you had a chance to retire and get a benefit check from us. It also includes teachers who have quit and they may be waiting for their pension to start at age 60. They're still active teachers for 4 years after they've quit. And unfortunately, if you're not vested, all we can do is refund the money in your contribution account, in your bucket of money. There is no kind of pension available if you're not vested. I'm assuming everyone on today's show is at least 10 plus years. You are vested. You're going to be getting a pension soon. So if you die before you can take advantage of that, you have some protection for your beneficiary in that the primary can either take option 2 for the rest of their lives and have it start immediately. Remember, that's the 100% benefit, just like the amount you would have been getting under option 2, or they can take the money in your bucket. Now, life expectancy, under a normal life expectancy scenario, they're going to get far more money if they take option 2, but legally we have to give them a choice of one or the other. So that's some real nice protection for your beneficiary if you die in active service. Now, in the scenario where there is no surviving primary when you pass away, then if it's a death in active service, the secondary can become the primary and get option 2 or the money in your account. When might that happen? Well, probably most commonly in a car accident, where let's say your spouse is your beneficiary, you both die in the car wreck, then we would go to whomever you designated as secondary, and then they could pick option 2 or the money in your account. All right, this is how it works if it's a death in active service. These features do not apply once you have retired. There is not this feature there, but there is protection in the event you do. So when can you change plan or beneficiary? Well, the easy answer is once you've got that first check, you are contractually locked in to whatever you selected. You can't call us and say, oops, I made a mistake. I really should have taken a different option. Well, it's a binding contract and we can't change it. So make sure you're comfortable with the selection. Now, after you've retired, there are limited changes you can make under the law when there's a death or divorce. And it also is impacted by whether you have one beneficiary or multiple. If you have multiple beneficiaries under the law, there are even more restrictions about changes you can make after retirement. With the max plan and option one, you can make changes because there are no, there's no monthly survivor benefit going out. And once your bucket of money is used up, the whole matter of beneficiary is moot, right? Because there's no money left to give to anybody. With options 2 through 4, and you have one beneficiary and that beneficiary predeceases you, you can change your beneficiary or the plan, but you can't go to the maximum plan unless at retirement you took the pop-up plan. If you get a divorce, you can change the beneficiary or plan. Oddly enough, you could go to the maximum plan in that scenario. Or, you may remarry and add a new beneficiary to option 2 through 4. We do recalculate your benefit, and it may very well go down. So some people don't put in a new beneficiary, they just go without one because they don't want a lower monthly benefit. So you may want to ask for a benefit estimate before you make any changes. If you have multiple beneficiaries and one of the beneficiaries predeceases you, you can't change plans or the remaining beneficiaries, and we don't adjust what's going to the remaining beneficiaries. But in the case of a divorce, you can remove a divorced spouse and reallocate to the remaining beneficiaries. And again, we recalculate. We pay the beneficiaries that are designated on our files, on account with you. Things like wills, divorce decrees, remarriages have no bearing on who we pay. So we're not subject to probate. We have a contractual relationship with you. So let's say you get a divorce and want to change beneficiaries. Don't forget to do that, because if you don't change and you pass away, legally we have to pay whomever you designated originally, which quite often is a spouse that you divorced. And it's an unhappy scenario. We may chuckle about it now, but it's a sad scenario for the new spouse. And it happens probably 2-3 times a year. So don't let that be you. If you want to designate a minor child, that's fine. You would need to have a court-appointed legal guardian as a conduit to pay that minor until they become an adult. If you do retire and pass within 30 days, by law and default, we move you into option 2 if you weren't there already, which is some nice protection because most people take the maximum plan and you wouldn't be getting anything in the way of a lifetime monthly benefit. So that's a nice little piece of protection. So make sure your beneficiaries are current and up to date, and that your primary and secondary are different people. We can't pay a monthly benefit to an estate. So if you've got a current beneficiary designated as an estate, you may want to change that to their name. That way we can pay a lifetime monthly benefit to them. All we can pay an estate is a lump sum distribution. We can, however, pay a monthly benefit to a power of attorney, to a special needs trust or a trust, just not an estate. So steps to consider today. Look at hiring a financial licensed planner. We can't give you specific advice at TRS. We can talk like we did today in generalities, but we can't tell you what to do, and we're not going to give you recommendations. We are on all forms of social media. So if you want to scan any of those codes, you could subscribe, like us on Facebook, Twitter, There's a code there for the TRS members guide. Might be a quick way to get it. We also have a lot of podcasts. So the next step is to get excited because you are almost there. And do we have any time for questions, Karen?
Well, I think some of them had been addressed, but
Okay.
one person in the chat said, can you change this after your first choice, like pop up two? I think I heard you say, Mike, that once you lock it in and you get your first retirement check, you are locked in. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're locked in unless you have one of those qualifying events that I just addressed. And like if you only had one beneficiary and you get a divorce, then they allow a change of option, but that's the only scenario. So make sure you're comfortable with the option you select at the time of retirement because you're locked in.
And then another question deals with sketchy sick leave records.
All right.
In the past, before 2005, but I think I've heard you say that TRS will extrapolate if there are missing sick leave records. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if records are missing, what we're going to do is look at the records that are out there for you. And from those existing records, we can derive average number of unused days a year. Let's say you end up with 5 days unused. Well, let's say 8 unused days per year. And you have 1 year where records weren't kept. We'll add 8 days for that 1 year of missing records. We'll toss that into your total accumulation. Now, when you say sketchy, if we're going to take whatever your school system certifies as your unused days. So if you have an issue with your school system in terms of your accrual, address your central office and tell them you disagree with your accrual, and they can do an audit and hopefully find in your favor if you think you're being shortchanged any days, because in the end it's got to come certified from the employer to us. So you wouldn't send your appeal on questionable days to us. It had to be resolved ahead of time between you and your employer.
And I'll make a plug for contacting, if you're a GAE member, your UNICEF director, who should be able to help you with that. Last 2 questions. So if you plan to, this person plans to retire at the end of the upcoming school year and just was asking about being paid during June and July. And so the person will continue to receive a paycheck from the school system until the contract ends. Correct?
Yeah, correct. So what that means is if you're normally getting prorated summer pay, you will get, 2 checks. How about that? From one from TRS and your prorated summer pay from your school system. So it's a nice little source of extra income that you can use to celebrate your retirement or whatever else you choose to do.
Great. And the last one for out-of-state verification of time, does that particular piece of paperwork need to be snail mailed, or can it be filled out online electronically?
I think all our forms are available for PDF fill out. Yeah, and you could email that to that other school system. You'd want to obviously get the appropriate contact person and their email address to send that paperwork to, and that would certainly speed up the process and avoid snail mail. That one's of all the ones we have, that's where we have the most snags, because quite often the out-of-state school system does not make your application a priority, and they may sit on it for a while. And quite often they fill it out based on like a calendar year and in terms of what salary you had there, and we need it reported to us in our fiscal year format. And we have to send it back to them if they have filled it out like based on a calendar year. So, but get the ball rolling, and we'll plow through it. Hopefully it won't take that long.
Great. Mike, thank you. And again, to everybody who's here, I'll be sending you out contact information and a link to today's video. I do want to wrap us up today by sharing some things that I hope you should know about. And before I screen share, TRS, Social Security really are your friends. And in terms of ask your questions early and often, ask your questions. When I retired, I went to a couple different Social Security offices to go through and make sure I get the same ballpark answer of things. And as Mike mentioned, make an appointment. There are video chats for TRS. There's Atlanta. There is the Macon office. And I'm going to just share some information. Again, I will send you all of this. And this is kind of a recap of some things that promote GAE Retired. You will get the minutes to the last TRS board meeting. All of these things have live links. And as Lisa Underwood mentioned earlier this morning, we will be attending the TRS board meeting in May. Other things that you should know about. Yes, I know you are working during the day, but Tony Smith, our GAE Retired president, is going to be our featured speaker at our lunch bunch on May 3rd. This is virtual. It is a Zoom, and talking about respect in the 21st century. So if you can come to any of this, again, this is open to all GAE members. The lunch bunch is the first Wednesday of the month. And in June, Aaron Warner, who is the NEA member benefits specialist, will be joining us. And in July, we're going to change it to July 12th. So it's a little later than the 4th of July, July 12th. TRS Executive Director Buster Evans will be joining us. So if you want it straight from the horse's mouth, and I mean that with all flattery, please join us on July 12th for Buster Evans. And all this information, in addition to your getting it, is in the GAE and GAE Retired communications vehicles. There'll be live links here to the information about GPO WEP repeal. And you can see, as Tony pointed out, who has joined us already of the 4 representatives. Thank them. If your person's name is not listed among these representatives, please ask them to repeal to support HR 82, which repeals GPO WEP. And again, information on the Senate version of the same thing. Next, as you retire, you're going to get information about joining retired educators organizations. And just like GAE has a competing organization, GAER has one also. And GAE Retired is the only retired organization that is associated both with GAE and NEA. So you, when you join GAE Retired, as I hope you will, you are joining 2 organizations, both the state and the national. And unfortunately, our competing organization uses the same letters and just rearranges them and is known as GRAE, Grocery Retired, GREA, sorry, got the letters wrong. But if you'll look always for the one with the hyphen, it means we are connected to GAE. And if you do decide to retire this year and join GAE Retired, I hope you'll click on the link in this particular graphic. There's just a lot of information about the membership forms. You can click to see our award-winning No magazine and just everything that we are doing at this point in time. We are an active organization, even though we're tired members. And even if you're not retiring this year, you can join GAE Retired, and you do that as a pre-retired subscriber. And as it says here, you're basically joining now, retiring later, and you're locking in your GAE Retired dues at the current rate. So love to have you be a pre-retired subscriber. And the lifetime membership fee for being a member of either one of these organizations is $450. That's a chunk of change. I realize that. But you can pay that over time. And the GAE membership year ends on August 31st. And so if you started in April, and you went through and you made 5 payments of $90 each, that would be your dues, your subscription fee to join GAE Retired or pre-retired. I happen to know that if you join in May, and I've done the math, it's $112.50. And when I joined over a decade ago, it was $300. When President Lisa Morgan joined, it was $200. And so you can see that the lifetime membership fee will only go up. You can pay the payments through your checking account or on a credit card. You still have to keep your GAE active membership, because the only benefit that GAE Retired does not have is liability. We're hoping that nobody will sue us because we're not in the classroom anymore. And if we go back to work, then we would have to be a substitute member if we're subbing, or to rejoin as an active member if we were in the classroom. Last thing is, since Tony and I are both on the GAE Board of Directors, we are having the GAE Leadership Development Academy in Augusta, June 5 through 7th. All GAE members are invited to attend, and we will be covering a ton of different issues at the Leadership Development Academy. And as Tony and I are fond of saying, you may be leaving your position when you retire, but you won't be leaving your profession. And we continue to go through and to advocate for education, public education issues in Georgia, in addition to retirement issues. So I hope that you will go through, and there'll be an enrollment form, a registration form. Deadline is on Mother's Day, May 14th. So please go through and take a look at that when you get that. And I know you'll want to keep your GAE member benefits and your NEA member benefits in place. And so one way to do that is to go ahead and be a GAE Retired member. And I'm also supposed to let you know from the chat that when you do join GAE